Help me find our daughter on this family hiking trip. Our 6-year-old daughter, Agnes, has gone missing, despite calling out her name repeatedly. There's no sign of her anywhere. It's your fault for taking your eyes off her. You go find her yourself. My husband, Zeke, coldly shoots back amidst the chaos and drives off alone. Wait, don't leave, I shout, chasing after the car, but my voice doesn't reach him. Left alone in the woods, I'm filled with dread about what will happen if I can't find Agnes. My name is Marley and I'm 35. Agnes, who just turned 6, is a very kind and adorable daughter. Zeke, who usually dislikes family outings, had suddenly suggested going hiking the day before. Zeke, the same age as me, is domineering and doesn't listen to others, a trait that's always bothered me. I wasn't thrilled about the hike since my asthma had been acting up for the last 3 days. Clean air will cure your annoying asthma, Zeke decided without hearing our opinions. When did he start speaking to me so harshly? He was a kind person when we first got married. Is this how a couple end up after 8 years of marriage? On the day of the hike, we drove for about 2 hours to get to the mountain. Upon arrival, Agnes jumps for joy. Wow, look Mom, I found these for you. She hands me acorns and pine cones she's collected. See, told you it would be good. Let's enjoy nature to the fullest. Yes, I'm glad Agnes is enjoying it. Although Zeke usually sleeps all day during his days off, today he's oddly excited, which feels a bit off. But I was happy that we could finally spend a normal family day. Let's go further in, the view is supposed to be amazing. After about 30 minutes of walking, I'm exhausted. Please, can we slow down a bit? If you don't keep up, we're leaving you behind. Come on, Mom, hurry up, they say as they get further and further away. I'm running low on stamina, and my throat starts making alarming noises as a cough sets in. Asthma here would be disastrous. Agnes is with Zeke, so she'll be fine. I should go at my own pace. Another 30 minutes later, I spot Zeke, but there's no sign of Agnes. Where's Agnes? She was with you, right? I ask urgently. Yeah, she was, but she wanted to explore further and ran off? Zeke replies casually. You let her go alone? I exclaim, my worry rising. She's too energetic for me to keep up with. If you're worried, go find her, Zeke retorts, pointing in the direction she went. The path he indicates is full of dense trees, and the trail isn't clear. I must find her quickly. This is dangerous. Agnes, where are you? Answer me, I desperately call out, but there's no response. About 20 minutes later, I return to where Zeke was, only to find him chatting with a young woman in her 20s. Where's Agnes? I ask anxiously. This lady just told me she saw a young girl walking towards the parking lot. I guess I'll go too, Zeke says, nonchalantly. No, you should keep looking in the woods, I urge him. Ignoring my plea, Zeke heads down the mountain with the woman, making their way to the parking lot. I search again in the direction Agnes went. It's eerily quiet, and I don't sense anyone around. Come to think of it, I've hardly seen anyone since we got here, except for that woman. What if I can't find her? Agnes, please answer me, I call out repeatedly, but my voice seems to get swallowed by the woods. Zeke isn't answering his phone, and I notice my cell has no service. Not knowing what else to do, I head back to the parking lot and find Zeke chatting with the woman. They're both smiling, so I assume Agnes must have been found. Where's Agnes? I inquire eagerly. Nope, she wasn't here, Zeke responds casually. What? Why are you so relaxed then? I can't help but express my frustration. Despite Agnes still being missing, Zeke was happily chatting with the young woman. I don't get why you're mad. Aren't you worried about Agnes? Let's look again together, I plead with Zeke. Enough. This is your fault for losing her. Go find her yourself. I'm going home, Zeke retorts, hopping into his car and driving off before I can protest. Wait, you can't be serious. I shout, but it's too late. He's already out of sight, and even when I call Zeke, he doesn't answer. He actually left us here. Before I know it, the young woman is also gone, and not a single car is left. What should I do now? The sun is setting, and it'll be dark soon. Thinking of how scared Agnes might be, I go back into the woods. But even after searching for over an hour, I hear nothing. The wheezing coming from the back of my throat is also getting stronger. I'm finding it hard to breathe. It's pointless looking alone. Finally, it hits me that I should call the police, but I can't get a signal. After a desperate search for a signal, I finally reach the police, only to learn that Agnes was safely found by a passerby. I hail a taxi to go get her. As soon as Agnes sees me, she runs to me, crying, Mom, thank God you're okay. Are you hurt? No, Mom. I was scared, Agnes says, comforting me. I'm so sorry, Agnes, I reply, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. But maybe it's the relief or maybe the stress, but I can't stop coughing. Agnes gently rubs my back. Mom, are you okay? Don't worry, we'll go to the hospital right away. I thank the police officer and we head to a nearby hospital for my asthma treatment. Luckily, it's not severe and I start feeling better after using the inhaler. But then, Agnes drops a bombshell. Mom, one of Dad's friends told me about a place full of beautiful flowers. I was with her, and the next thing I knew, I was alone. Wait, you didn't go exploring in the woods? I asked, alarmed. No, I wouldn't do that. Do you remember what this woman with Dad looked like? Agnes pulled out her toy camera and showed me a picture she'd taken. It was of a young woman Zeke had been with earlier, and they were snuggled up, clearly more than just friends. Could he be cheating? The shock made me feel dizzy and I crouched down right there. Mom, are you okay? Agnes asked, still worried. I'm fine, I said, still coughing. Seeing Agnes's worried face, I realized I couldn't give in now. He won't get away with this. I'm going to dig deep to keep Zeke from knowing my whereabouts, I resolved. I turned off my phone's location and decided to stay at my brother's nearby apartment. From that day on, my brother, Tin, who had recently moved in, would be my refuge. Zeke didn't know that our house was visible from there. However, Zeke's car wasn't home, and the house was dark and quiet. Where could he be? I took out my phone and called Zeke. What do you want? He snapped. How could you leave us behind? Because you're annoying. So, did you find Agnes? He asked curtly. Yes, she's safe, and my asthma's gotten bad, so I'm going to be hospitalized for about a week. Agnes will stay at my parents' house. Really? You sound almost happy about it. I'm glad Agnes is safe. Take care, he said, his tone insincere. My mistrust for Zeke, who was not only unapologetic but also blatantly lying, only deepened. He didn't even ask which hospital I was in. He's probably with her right now, planning something awful. I was burning with rage, but I had to wait until I saw the truth for myself. Finally, Zeke came home late at night and left for work at his usual time the next morning. In the meantime, I purchased a small security camera and installed it indoors. I could view its footage, including audio, directly on my phone. Now, I had Zeke under surveillance. That night, the woman I saw in the mountains walked into our house, and they started having dinner while drinking wine in the living room. Seeing them get touchy-feely made me nauseous. It was a good idea to take advantage of my wife's sickness and take her to the mountain. This 1 week she's in the hospital will be heaven. You were so clever, boss, the woman praised. Right now, we can relax without anyone disturbing us. It's not comfortable being together at work, but you always say the thrill makes it better, Zeke replied. True to his words, it seems his affair partner is a subordinate at his workplace. They even seem to be doing something suspicious at work. I can't believe this. Absolutely unforgivable. They were laughing happily, hugging each other. Now is my chance to catch them in the act. I left my brother's house quietly and approached mine. Confirming they were in the middle of it all, I started recording on my phone. Then I opened the door with a loud noise. Well, aren't we lively? I said coldly. Why are you here? You're supposed to be in the hospital. Zeke stuttered, caught off guard. Ow, 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 the woman cried out. They couldn't even separate. Helpless, pathetic. Please call an ambulance, I urged. Sirens wailed and a crowd gathered outside our home because Zeke and the woman were screaming so loudly. Covered only with bedsheets, they were loaded into the ambulance as his wife. I followed them to the hospital, and not long after arriving and receiving medical attention, Zeke and his mistress were released. The doctor said they were free to go, so the two of them were shivering on a hospital bench, wrapped only in sheets as they had no clothes. This was just pathetic. When did you get out of the hospital? I was never admitted in the first place, Zeke admitted. I've been keeping tabs on you, you know. What? How? He asked, bewildered. From my brother's new apartment. It has a clear view of our house, I explained, feeling a mix of exhaustion and frustration. I sighed and handed them hospital pajamas I borrowed from the nurse's station. I couldn't bear to watch their disgrace any longer. They hurriedly put on the pajamas. So, how long has this been going on? I demanded. You got it all wrong. She just came to drop off some work documents. Zeke insisted. Oh, really? I retorted, showing Zeke the picture Agnes took. This is you. You left Agnes alone in the mountains just to get cozy with her, didn't you? That's not true. She was gone when I realized it. Zeke tried to play dumb, but I wasn't buying it. I replayed the conversation I heard between them in the living room. Both Zeke and the woman were clearly shaken. Still going to deny it? I asked, my anger simmering. Well, about that. I can't believe you waited for me to be away to meet up with her. What's wrong with you? I snapped, feeling a mix of betrayal and hurt. Look who's talking. You're the one spying on me. Zeke countered, trying to deflect blame. Can you say that after leaving our sick child and me alone in the mountains? I retorted, feeling my patience wearing thin. Seeing Zeke's lack of remorse, I could feel my feelings for him dwindling away. I'll never forgive you for putting Agnes in danger. Let's get a divorce. Divorce? Why? Zeke asked, taken aback. How can you even ask that? If you're so well matched with her, then just go be with her, I retorted, glaring at the woman sitting next to me. She glared back, attempting to intertwine her arm with Zeke's. However, Zeke shook off her arm and grabbed my hand. I was just messing around with her. I never intended to ruin our family, and to be honest, it was painful and awful. So I'm breaking up with her, Zeke explained. The woman's face contorted like a demon's. She slapped Zeke across the face. Are you kidding me? What are you saying? Enough. I'm tired of women who are only younger. That's cruel. You said you'd marry me after you divorce, the woman accused, her voice rising in anger. Watching their quarrel unfold, I was beyond disgusted. Both a woman who knew he was married and Zeke, who would surely repeat this behavior, were to blame. Cut it out. This is a hospital. Keep it down, I scolded. Finally, both quieted down at my scolding. It seemed like they both needed a heavy dose of self-reflection. You better prepare yourself. I'm reporting you to the police for abandoning me and our young daughter in the mountains. When I was sick, what is that, a crime? Zeke exclaimed defensively. Of course it is, yikes. Please give me a break. Just forget the police, I interjected, feeling exasperated. Both suddenly backtracked, looking up at me apologetically. Although they were saying sorry, their hearts weren't in it. I bet that's not all I want. The house sold for the division of property and $30,000 for infidelity compensation. Don't forget the child support for Agnes, I demanded. Please forgive me, I'm sorry, Zeke pleaded, while the woman who laid hands on him owed me $30,000 and damages as well. We can't afford that. Not my problem. You'll have to take out loans, I retorted, feeling a mix of anger and resolve. Oh God, if you've learned anything, stay away from men with families. Got it? Please rethink this. Zeke suddenly bowed down to the floor in apology, and the woman hastily followed suit. What is there to rethink now? I looked down on both of them with disdain. No way. I'll inform your company about this as well. Goodbye. This is the worst. I left Zeke and his affair partner yelling and immediately went to the police to file a report. Soon after, they were both arrested for abandonment charges related to me and my daughter Agnes. According to my lawyer, it's going to be a pretty serious offense for them. Zeke and his mistress lost their jobs as a result. I finalized the divorce and made them pay the affair settlement and child support in one lump sum. With the money from selling our house, I was even able to get a settlement from the mistress paid from her severance package. As I was considering moving out of the apartment, Tan, who had been so helpful, said, I worry about you and Agnes living on your own. Why don't you stay here with me? Taking him up on his kind offer, now happily spending each day with my loving daughter and beloved brother. Perhaps because my stress has gone down, my asthma attacks have also stopped, and I'm feeling great now.
I remember the day I met Alex like it was yesterday. I was at this little dive cafe, minding my own business, sipping on the cheapest coffee they had, trying to make sense of my scattered thoughts and plans. That's when he walked in, like a scene straight out of a movie, except there were no dramatic lights or music, just the sound of the bell above the door and the smell of stale coffee mixed with his aftershave. Is this seat taken? He asked, pointing to the chair across from me with a smile that could knock you off your feet. Looks free to me, I replied, trying to sound cool and not at all flustered by his sudden appearance. We started talking, and damn, it was like we were cut from the same cloth. He was into all the junk I was, from binge-watching the same trashy series to arguing about the best pizza topping. It's pineapple, fight me. Fast forward a bit, and we're dating. Not just casual meetups, but the real deal. It felt like I'd known him my whole life, and before we knew it, we were talking about getting hitched. That's when the drama started. His parents, let me tell you, were something else. The first time I met them, it was like walking into a lion's den wearing a meat dress. They had this way of smiling while sizing you up, like they were deciding whether you were worth their time or not. "So, you're the girl Alex can't stop yapping about," his mom said, her voice dripping with something that was definitely not warmth. "Guilty as charged," I shot back, trying not to let her see she got to me. "They laid down the law pretty quick, telling us we needed to sign a prenup. Now, I ain't no gold digger, and I sure as hell don't need anyone's money, but that rubbed me the wrong way. I'll sign your prenup," I told them. "But I've got one condition. If one of us cheats, the cheater pays up 100 grand. Alex looked like I'd slapped him with a fish. "Babe, I'd never cheat on you," he said, all wide-eyed and serious. Yeah, well, my ex said the same thing before I caught him with his pants down, literally. "So, it's this or nothing." He agreed, and his parents did too, though they looked like they'd swallowed lemons. We thought that was the end of it, but boy, were we wrong. One evening, we were cuddled up on the couch, a tradition we had started since moving in together. We had this old, rickety couch that we swore we'd replace, but never did because, somehow, it had become our spot. The TV was on, but we weren't watching. We were too busy making plans for a trip to Italy we knew we couldn't afford, but were determined to make happen. "Alex, think about it. The food, the wine, the art. We have to go," I said, my eyes sparkling with excitement. Alex laughed, wrapping his arm tighter around me. "Emily, babe, you had me at food. But let's face it, our bank account is more camping in the backyard than romantic getaway to Venice." I playfully nudged him. "So, we'll save. We'll cut back on. I don't know, things we don't need, like your video games." He feigned horror. "Not the video games. Take my shirts, my shoes, even my beloved coffee maker, but leave the games alone." We laughed, but that was us, always dreaming big but grounded in the reality of our modest lives. We didn't care, we were happy. The happiness wasn't just in the big moments, it was in the little things, too. Like how Alex would make breakfast on Saturdays. He couldn't cook to save his life, but he'd somehow mastered the art of scrambled eggs and toast, which he'd serve with a side of his terrible coffee. I loved those mornings. "Hey, I'm thinking scrambled eggs today, what do you think?" he'd ask, already heading to the kitchen. "Only if you promise not to burn the toast this time," I'd call out, followed by, "And I'm making the coffee." One day, the topic we had been avoiding came up. We were doing dishes together, a mundane task that somehow felt special because we were doing it together. "Emily, we need to talk about, starting a family," Alex said, breaking the comfortable silence. I paused, a plate in hand. "I know. It's scary, isn't it? What if we can't?" Alex turned to me, drying his hands on a towel. "Then we'll deal with it, together. But we won't know until we try, right? I mean, how hard can it be?" I laughed, a mix of nerves and love. Famous last words, babe. But that's how it was with us. No matter what we were facing, we faced it together. Even when his mom started dropping not-so-subtle hints about grandchildren every chance she got, we took it in stride. "Emily, darling, when are you going to give me some grandbabies? You're not getting any younger, she'd say, her voice sweet but the message anything but. I'd bite my tongue, smile, and say, "We're working on it, aren't we, Alex?" And he'd jump in, "Yeah, Mom, lay off, will you? These things take time." But as the year went on, the pressure started to build, not just from his mom, but from within. We wanted a family, but it wasn't happening as easily as we had hoped. Ever since Judy found her new hobby of making my life a living hell, our home turned into a battleground, and the main weapon was her sharp tongue. It wasn't just about the occasional jibe anymore, it was an all-out war, with daily assaults on my self-esteem and role as a wife. It all spiraled one Sunday lunch, a day that was supposed to be laid back and peaceful. Judy, with her uncanny timing, dropped by uninvited, just as we were about to sit down. The air was tense the moment she walked in, her eyes scanning the room like she was about to conduct a military inspection. "Well, isn't this quaint?" she started, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she looked at the modest spread I'd prepared. "You really outdid yourself, Emily. I can see you've been slaving away in the kitchen all morning." Her eyes briefly met mine, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Trying to keep the peace, I forced a smile. "It's nothing fancy, Judy. Just something simple and quick. Please, have a seat." As we sat down, the barrage began in earnest. "You know, Emily," Judy said, loading her voice with condescension, "I was talking to Mrs. Henderson the other day, and she mentioned how her grandson was just born. It got me thinking, when are you and Alex going to give me some good news? It's not like you're getting any younger." I felt my cheeks burn, a mix of embarrassment and anger. I glanced at Alex, hoping for some support, but he was suddenly very interested in his plate. "Mom, come on," Alex finally muttered, but it was half-hearted, and we all knew it. Judy plowed on, relentless. "And Alex, dear, I don't mean to be cruel, but you're not a charity. You work hard for your money. Why waste it on Emily if she can't do her basic duties as a wife? A cleaning service and a cook would be much more efficient, don't you think?" That's when I couldn't hold it back any longer. "Judy, I am trying my best here. It's not like I don't want to have kids. And as for the house and my cooking, well, I didn't realize marriage was a service contract." Judy scoffed. "Well, it's not a free ride either. You have responsibilities, Emily, which you're clearly not fulfilling." The room was heavy with tension, and I could feel the tears pricking at the back of my eyes. But what hurt the most wasn't Judy's words, it was Alex's silence. He finally spoke up, but it wasn't to defend me. "Yeah, Mom has a point. Maybe we should consider getting some help around here. Would make things easier for you, too." "Easier for me?" His words felt like a betrayal. It was clear I was on my own in this. Over the next few days, Judy's visits became more frequent, and with each visit, her criticism grew sharper. She'd inspect the house, pointing out every speck of dust or a pillow out of place. "You call this clean?" she'd scoff. "My eyes must be deceiving me, because this looks like a pigsty." Then came the comments about my appearance. "Is that what you're wearing? You know, a wife should dress to please her husband. It's no wonder Alex is always so tired, he has to come home to this." I tried to fight back. "Judy, I don't dress for Alex, I dress for myself. And he's always so tired because he works hard, not because of what I wear." But it was like talking to a brick wall. Judy had made up her mind about me, and nothing I said or did would change it. Alex's stance, or lack thereof, was the biggest blow. Each night, after his mom's departure, we'd argue. "Why won't you stand up for me, Alex? She's walking all over us, and you're just letting her." "Emily, she's old, set in her ways. What do you want me to do, kick my own mom out?" "No, but I want you to be my husband, to stand by me, not her." It was clear this was more than just about Judy's disapproval. It was about us, our marriage, and whether we were strong enough to stand together or let Judy's criticisms tear us apart. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that this wasn't just a phase. It was a full-blown siege, and if we didn't do something soon, there might not be anything left to save. Things between me and Alex had been icy since Judy ramped up her campaign of critique. But it wasn't just the home front that was feeling the strain. Alex himself had started acting weird, and not in a "he's just stressed at work" kind of way. It was something else, something that made my stomach twist in knots. It started with the phone calls. Alex had always been pretty open about his phone, we didn't keep secrets from each other. But then, he started stepping out of the room every time he got a call. And it was always the same caller ID, John Work. Who's John Work? I asked one evening, trying to keep my voice casual. Alex flinched, a telltale sign that he was on edge. Oh, just a new guy at the office. Lots of questions, you know? But it didn't stop there. Alex, who was as far from a fashionista as you could get, suddenly started caring about his appearance. Gone were the days of graphic tees and worn-out jeans. Now, it was all crisp shirts and slacks. And cologne, he was using cologne now. Since when did he care about smelling like a department store? What's with the new look, Alex? Got a job interview or something? I joked one morning, watching him comb his hair in a way I'd never seen before. He just smirked, a little too quickly. Just felt like changing things up. No harm in that, right? And the late nights at work, they were becoming a regular thing. Another long one, babe? I'd text, trying not to sound too needy. Sorry, Em. This project is killing me. Won't be late, I promise. He'd text back, but the clock would tick well past midnight before I heard his keys in the door. I tried to shake the feeling that something was off, but it clung to me like a shadow. That's when I decided to hire a private detective. It felt like something out of a bad TV show, but I had to know for sure. The evidence came in a plain brown envelope, the contents as damning as they were heartbreaking. Photos of Alex with another woman, their intimacy undeniable, captured in frozen moments that shattered our years together. But it was the recording that cut the deepest. Their conversations, filled with endearments and plans, left no room for doubt. They were in love, or at least, he was with her. I sat there, the evidence spread out in front of me, a cold realization settling in. This was it, this was the proof that could anchor me in a stormy divorce, should it come to that. Photos that caught moments stolen from our life together, and words that betrayed every "I love you" he had ever whispered in my ear. But I kept it all a secret, a painful burden I chose to carry alone. I wasn't ready to confront him, not yet. I needed a plan, a way to navigate the wreckage of our marriage with my dignity intact. The following days were a blur. Alex continued his charade, and I played along, the perfect wife with a smile plastered on my face and a heart breaking silently. Our conversations became a dance around the truth, each word measured, every laugh forced. Everything okay, Em? You've been quiet, Alex would ask, his concern seemingly genuine. Yeah, just tired, you know? Work's been crazy, I'd reply, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. It was just another mundane day, or so I thought, until I stumbled upon a conversation that would change everything. There I was, passing by the slightly ajar door to Alex's office, when their voices caught my attention. It was Alex and his mother, Judy, and they weren't just chit-chatting. The tone was serious, heavy with intent. I'm telling you, Mom, I can't do this anymore. It's not just about the kids, I've lost all feeling for Emily. It's like we're roommates, not husband and wife. Alex's voice, strained and tired, floated through the gap. Judy's voice, ever so sharp, replied, Well, of course, you feel that way. She's not given you a child, and let's be honest, what else has she brought to this marriage? But let's not be hasty. My 70th birthday is coming up, and we wouldn't want to miss out on a generous gift from her, now would we? The cynicism in her voice was like a knife twisting in my gut. They were plotting against me, using me until they deemed it convenient to throw me aside. And after we get a nice, expensive gift, we can kick her to the curb, right? Alex said, his voice cold and calculating. Exactly, dear. Just bide your time a little longer, Judy confirmed, her voice dripping with malice. I stood there, rooted to the spot, a mix of shock and anger boiling inside me. They were planning my exit from this family as casually as one would plan a grocery list. The hurt was deep, but it sparked something else in me, a burning desire for revenge. They thought they could use me, discard me at their convenience? I'd show them I wasn't just some pawn in their twisted game. A few days later, during a family dinner that felt more like a farce than a meal, Judy brought up her upcoming birthday. With the same smirk that I had come to despise, she leaned in and asked, "So, Emily, dear, what are you planning for my birthday? Something special, I hope." I met her gaze, my face a mask of calm. "Actually, Judy, I was thinking of throwing you a dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant. A night you won't forget." Her eyes lit up with greed, and she exchanged a quick, satisfied look with Alex. They thought they had me cornered, but little did they know, I was already 2 steps ahead. "Oh, Emily, that sounds delightful. Just close family, you know. Keep it intimate," Judy said, her voice oozing fake sweetness. "Of course, Judy. It'll be our pleasure," I replied, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The weeks leading up to Judy's 70th birthday felt like a slow march towards D-Day. Every smirk from her, every indifferent shrug from Alex, fueled my resolve. The plan was simple yet bold, just like the movies: host a lavish dinner at the city's most luxurious restaurant under the guise of a loving gesture, then drop the bombshell. But, like any good plot, the devil was in the details. The night before the party, the tension at home was palpable. Alex, oblivious to the storm brewing, was casually lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Everything set for tomorrow?" he asked, not looking up. "Oh, you could say that," I replied, my tone light, belying the turmoil inside. The day arrived, and as guests started to fill the opulent dining room reserved for Judy's celebration, the air was thick with anticipation. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from the adrenaline of what was about to unfold. Judy, ever the queen bee, basked in the attention, lavishing in the luxury of her surroundings. "Oh, Emily, you've outdone yourself. This place is exquisite," she exclaimed, her voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. As we all settled in, the meal proceeded with the kind of forced merriment that comes with such family gatherings. Laughs were shared, stories exchanged, and then, as the dessert plates were cleared away, the waiter approached with the final act of the evening, the bill. He leaned in, discreetly informing us the dinner cost was $3,000. Without missing a beat, I handed over my card, the gesture unnoticed by most. It was then Alex, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, decided to drop his bombshell. "Emily, I think it's time everyone knew. I'm tired of this, of us. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air, a toxic cloud that seemed to suffocate all other noise in the room. Before I could even process the full weight of his statement, Judy piped up, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "Well, then. Since that's out in the open, I think it's best you leave, Emily. We're celebrating family tonight, and well, you're no longer part of it." The room went deadly silent. Every eye was on me, waiting to see how I'd crumble. But I didn't. With a calm I didn't feel, I stood, nodded, and walked out without a word. The cool night air hit me like a slap as I made my way home, the finality of everything that had happened washing over me in waves. By the time I reached his apartment, a plan formed. I packed my essentials, the numbness giving way to a cold resolve. This was it. The end of one life and the start of another. As I zipped the last suitcase, my phone started buzzing, a relentless, insistent vibration that I initially ignored. Curiosity, however, got the better of me. Judy's voice screeched from the other end. "Emily. The payment didn't go through. You need to fix this now." The sweet, sweet irony. In my preparations for the inevitable, I had secured my exit strategy. I had blocked the shared account, knowing it would be the first thing Alex would try to use against me. "Oh, Judy, that's unfortunate. But since I'm no longer part of the family, as you so eloquently put it, I'm afraid you'll have to sort this out yourselves." Her outrage was palpable, even through the phone, but it was music to my ears. The chaos that unfolded was a fitting end to the farce my marriage had become. Reports came through the grapevine of the restaurant staff demanding payment, of Judy's escalating tantrums, and eventually, the arrival of the police to calm the storm she had become. In the end, it was Alex and his relatives who had to pool together the money to settle the bill, a poetic justice for the betrayal and humiliation they had subjected me to. The morning after the dinner disaster felt like waking up to the aftermath of a storm. I had my plan, my resolve, and a set of divorce papers in my hand as I made my way back to what used to be our shared home for the last time. The moment I stepped through the door, the air crackled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. Alex and Judy were there, looking like they'd been arguing. The sight of me seemed to unite them in hostility. "You've got some nerve showing up here after last night," Alex spat out, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. Judy, ever the viper, was quick to add her poison. "Ungrateful wretch. You've embarrassed us in front of the whole city. Do you know how humiliating it was to have the police calm me down? People were laughing, filming." I met their fury with a calm I didn't feel. "Embarrassed? You think that's your biggest problem right now?" I tossed the divorce papers on the table, the photos of Alex's infidelity on top. "You should be more concerned with this." The color drained from Alex's face as he picked up the photos, his mother peering over his shoulder. Their outrage turned to shock, then to panic as they realized the extent of what I had. "And let's not forget the prenup, shall we?" I continued, my voice steady. "You cheat, you pay. $100,000, to be exact." Judy's face twisted into a snarl. "You wouldn't dare. You can't do this to us." "Oh, but I can. And I will." My tone was cold, final. Alex, the reality of the situation finally dawning on him, switched tactics. Please. Let's talk about this. We can fix it." I couldn't help but laugh, bitter and hard. "Fix it? You think you can just undo everything with a few words?" "No, Alex. It's done." Judy, ever the manipulator, tried a softer approach, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Emily, darling, think about what you're doing. This will ruin us." "That ship has sailed, Judy. You should have thought about that before." The begging turned to pleading, their words a desperate scramble to salvage what they could. But my mind was made up. I was done being the victim, done with their lies and manipulations. In the end, Alex had no choice but to borrow the money from his parents to pay me. As I left that house for the last time, check in hand, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. After everything went down, I used the payout from Alex to put a down payment on a small, but cozy place of my own. It's funny, you know, how much peace you can find in the walls of a place that's just yours, where every nook feels like a sanctuary from the chaos of the past. Life's quieter now, and I like it that way. I've got a job that keeps me busy, neighbors who nod and smile, and a little garden that's all mine to tend to. But every once in a while, the grapevine tosses a juicy bit my way about Alex and Judy. Just the other day, I was grabbing coffee from the corner spot where locals hang, and I'd bumped into someone from the old neighborhood. After the usual pleasantries, they leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Hey, have you heard about the latest drama with your ex and his mom?" they asked, eyes gleaming with the thrill of gossip. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, a mix of curiosity and detachment taking hold. "Can't say that I have." "Do tell." "Well," they started, clearly savoring the moment. "It seems Judy's not too pleased with Alex's new girlfriend. Word is, they've been at it like cats and dogs. Makes your situation look like a walk in the park." The conversation moved on, but as I walked away, coffee in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling of utter relief. There was a time when news like that would have sent me spiraling, but now? Now it was just another piece of someone else's story. These days, my biggest concern is whether my tomatoes will ripen before the squirrels get to them or if I'll ever get the hang of yoga without looking like a newborn deer on ice. Life's simpler, quieter, and infinitely sweeter on this side of chaos. It all started in a way that you'd least expect. My name's Olivia, and I was just another face in the corporate world, grinding away my days until Jack walked into my life. He was a client for the firm I worked at, and our first meeting was anything but ordinary. There was this spark, an instant click, something that made the air crackle with energy whenever we were in the same room. "Olivia, right? Heard you're the wizard with numbers around here," Jack said on the day we met, his voice laced with a grin that I could hear before I saw it. "Wizard might be stretching it, but I know my way around them," I replied, trying to keep my composure. Who was this guy, coming in and throwing words like wizard around? Our conversations quickly moved from strictly business to personal interests, dreams, and eventually, our views on life. It was like finding a piece of myself that I didn't know was missing. Jack was charming, not just in a smooth talker kind of way, but genuinely caring. He listened, really listened, and that was rare. We started seeing each other outside of work, and each date felt like we were peeling back layers, revealing more and more of ourselves. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. "I can't believe you actually enjoy pineapple on pizza," I teased during one of our dinner dates. "Hey, don't knock it till you try it. It's the perfect combo of sweet and savory," Jack defended, his eyes lighting up with the kind of passion people reserve for sports teams or favorite bands. "That sounds like something only a madman would say," I shot back, laughter bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. Jack's laugh joined mine, filling the space around us with warmth. Those moments felt like we were in our little world, far away from the prying eyes and expectations of reality. 6 months flew by in a blur of shared smiles, whispered secrets, and dreams laid bare. Then, almost impulsively, Jack proposed. It was messy, unplanned, and in the middle of our favorite dive bar. No grand gestures or hidden photographers, just raw emotion. "Olivia, I know this isn't fancy. I don't have a ring yet, and we're surrounded by the smell of stale beer, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. Marry me?" His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. In that moment, I realized how deeply I had fallen. "Yes, but if we're doing this, we're doing it our way. No fuss, just us." Our marriage was quick, just like our decision. We didn't need a big wedding. All that mattered was the promise we made to each other. We moved into Jack's place, a cozy little house that suddenly felt like home because we were together. Life with Jack was like living in a bubble, perfect and undisturbed, until Linda, his mom, decided it was her mission to burst it. Living next door, she had this uncanny timing of showing up right when we least expected or wanted her to. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as Jack and I were lounging on the couch, there was a knock on the door. Before we could even pretend we weren't home, Linda barged in like a hurricane on a mission. "Olivia, darling, how are you?" she bellowed, her voice carrying that peculiar mix of concern and accusation. "I'm good, Linda. Just enjoying the weekend," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Enjoying, huh? You know what would make weekends better? A grandchild running around," she shot back, her eyes darting between Jack and me, as if her mere gaze could impregnate me. Jack, ever the peacemaker, tried to lighten the mood. "Mom, we've talked about this. We're not in a rush." Linda wasn't having any of it. "Not in a rush? I had Jack when I was your age, Olivia. The clock is ticking, you know." Her words hung in the air, a constant reminder of the pressure she was piling on us. It wasn't just the occasional comments anymore, it was every single visit. Dinners were marred by her pointed questions and comparisons to her friends' children, who were apparently popping out grandchildren left, right, and center. One evening, she overstepped more than usual. We were at her place for what was supposed to be a peaceful dinner. The main course wasn't the only thing served, Linda dished out her ultimatum as well. "Olivia, I've been patient, but I need to know. Are you even capable of giving me grandchildren?" Linda's voice was sharp, each word slicing through the pretense of a familial meal. I was taken aback, anger boiling in my veins. "Linda, that's way out of line. We'll have kids when and if we want to. And when we're ready, not because you're demanding it." Jack finally found his voice, though it was softer than I'd hoped. "Mom, Olivia's right. This isn't just about what you want." But Linda was relentless. Fine, if you won't do it for me, do it for yourselves. But I want you to get checked out. I need to know the problem isn't from your side. The nerve of her, as if bearing children was some family duty I was failing at. Jack looked at me, his eyes apologetic. Maybe you should, Liv. Just to get her off our backs. I agreed, but on one condition. Fine, but you're getting checked too, Jack. Fair's fair. Okay. Anything for peace, he conceded, though I could tell he was just as annoyed. The whole ordeal of getting tested was humiliating and invasive, not to mention completely unnecessary in my eyes. But it turned out to be an eye-opener in ways we hadn't anticipated. Jack's results came back, and the irony of the situation wasn't lost on us. The issue Linda was so concerned about, the delay in expanding our little family, stemmed from her precious son. The aftermath was a blend of vindication and sorrow. I wasn't sure how to feel. I wanted to rage at Linda, to throw her words back in her face, but I also saw the man I loved crumbling under the weight of his own imperfections. Linda's reaction was predictably unsupportive. Instead of rallying around her son, she doubled down on her blame game, pointing fingers at me for not being understanding enough, for not caring for Jack in his time of need. And Jack? Well, he wasn't the same. The light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by shadows of doubt and shame. He retreated into himself, leaving me to fend off Linda's barbs alone. Jack's struggle with the news about his fertility hit him harder than a freight train. Instead of facing it head-on, he looked for escape in booze, letting the bottles drown out his sorrows and shame. Nights turned into a blur, with him either passed out or staring into nothing, a whiskey bottle his only company. One evening, I couldn't just watch him spiral anymore. Jack, this ain't the way, you know. We gotta face this thing together, not let it tear us apart, I said, my voice a mix of frustration and worry. He just scoffed, the smell of alcohol heavy in his words. Face what, Olivia? That I'm a failure? That I can't give you kids? What's the damn point? It's not about that, Jack. It's about us, finding a way through. The doctors said it was unlikely, not impossible. Maybe see other doctors, explore other options. I tried to get through to him, but it was like talking to a wall. Other options? You mean raising some other guy's kid? That ain't gonna be my child, Olivia. How am I supposed to live with that? His words were like daggers, but I knew it was the booze and pain talking. Any child we raise would be ours, Jack. Ours. It doesn't matter how they come to us, I countered, but it was like I was speaking a foreign language to him. He just shook his head, sinking further into the couch and his despair. You don't get it, Liv. You'll never get it. That night was just the start. Jack began blowing off work, first with sick calls, then not even bothering. His job, once his pride, now seemed like just another burden. Linda, his mom, only added fuel to the fire. Olivia's not doing enough for you, Jack. A real wife would have you out of this slump, she accused one day, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I had enough and shot back. Doing enough? I'm trying to keep us afloat here, Linda. But he needs more than just me yelling at him. He needs help, real help, not just your complaints. Linda glared at me, her voice icy. My son doesn't need some shrink. He needs his family. And a wife who's actually there for him. Her words stung, but I knew standing by Jack was all I was doing, even as he slipped further away, becoming a ghost in his own life. I tried again one night, the silence heavy between us. Jack, we can't go on like this. I can't watch you tear yourself apart. I love you, damn it. For a moment, there was a glimmer of the old Jack in his eyes. I don't know how to stop this, Liv. I'm lost. It was a crack in his armor, but promises made in desperation are fragile. And as time went on, the depth of Jack's descent became painfully clear. The last straw was his job. They fired him for showing up drunk, if he showed up at all. After that, he just lay on the couch all day, a shell of the man I married. Whenever I tried to reach out, to pull him back, he'd just head to Linda's, seeking refuge in the one place that never seemed to help. Days blurred into each other, each one a repeat of the last, Jack on the couch, lost in his own misery, and me, juggling 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. It felt like we were stuck in a never-ending storm with no way out. But then, something changed. It was a regular Thursday evening when I found out. I'd been feeling off for a while, sick in the mornings, and just not myself. On a whim, I picked up a pregnancy test. I remember standing in our cramped bathroom, waiting for the result, my heart hammering in my chest. When the positive sign showed up, I couldn't believe it. I was pregnant. I remember the moment I decided to tell Jack. He was on the couch, staring off into nothing, a half-empty bottle of beer in his hand. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I had this crazy hope that maybe, just maybe, this news would snap him out of whatever hole he'd fallen into. "Jack, I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant," I said, the words feeling both heavy and light at the same time. Jack's reaction was nothing like I'd hoped. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "Pregnant? How the hell is that possible? You know what the doctor said about me." I tried to keep my voice steady, to explain the situation calmly. "Jack, the doctor said it was unlikely, not impossible. This baby is ours." But Jack wasn't having any of it. He got up, his anger palpable. "Ours? Don't give me that crap, Olivia. You've been cheating on me, haven't you? That's the only way this makes sense." Before I could even process what he was saying, Linda barged in, her timing as impeccable as ever. "What's all this shouting about?" she demanded. Jack was quick to fill her in, his words twisted by bitterness. "Olivia's pregnant. Claims it's mine, but we both know that's a lie." Linda turned on me, her eyes flashing with accusation. "You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you, you go and betray my son like this?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Betray him? "Linda, I'd been here, trying to make things work, even when Jack gave up. This baby is his, whether you like it or not." The argument spiraled from there, with both of them hurling accusations and demands. Linda, in her infinite wisdom, decided I should leave. "Get out of this house, Olivia. We don't need a liar and a cheat under this roof." I was so tired of the fighting, the accusations, the endless cycle of despair. So, I agreed. "Fine. I'll go. But not for you. For this baby, who deserves better than this mess." Jack didn't stop me. He didn't say a word as I walked out the door, my heart heavy, but my resolve strong. This baby was my glimmer of hope, and I was going to do everything in my power to protect it, to give it the life it deserved. Away from all the chaos, away from a love that had turned so toxic it was unrecognizable. Starting over wasn't easy, not by a long shot. There I was, pregnant, alone, and frankly, a bit scared. But there was this fire in me, too, a determination to make things right for the little one growing inside me. I moved into a small, cozy apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours, mine and the baby's. I picked up extra shifts at work, anything to make sure we'd have what we needed. Nights were the hardest, though. It was just me and my thoughts, and sometimes, the silence was too loud. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat on the worn-out sofa, rubbing my belly, talking to the baby. "It's just you and me, kiddo. But we're gonna make it, you'll see. I'm gonna make sure of it." That's when the phone rang. It was my sister, Lucy. She'd been my rock through all of this. "Hey, Liv. How are you holding up?" Lucy's voice was always a balm, soothing and warm. "We're hanging in there. Some days are better than others," I admitted, not wanting to worry her too much. "Listen, Liv, you're not alone in this. Remember that. If you need anything, a break, someone to talk to, or just a night off from cooking, you call me, okay?" Her words meant the world to me. "Thanks, Luce. I really appreciate it." We talked a bit more about nothing in particular. Lucy always had a way of making me laugh, even when I felt like crying. After hanging up, I felt a little lighter, a bit more ready to face the world. As the weeks turned into months, I got to know every inch of that little apartment. I decorated a corner for the baby, putting together a makeshift nursery. It wasn't much, but it was filled with love. As my due date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. I was about to meet my baby, to start this new chapter for Real. And even though I was doing it on my own, I knew we'd be okay. Life as a single mom had its set of challenges, but me and my little boy, Max, we were doing all right. He was growing up fast, all smiles and curiosity, making all the tough times worth it. Then, one day, life decided to throw us another curveball. I was at the park with Max, pushing him on the swings, when I ran into a face from the past, Tina, an old friend of Jack's. Her expression was a mix of surprise and something else, maybe pity, when she saw us. "Olivia? Wow, it's been ages. How are you holding up?" Her voice was cautious, like she was walking on eggshells. "We're managing, thanks. Max keeps me on my toes," I said, trying to keep the conversation light. "Yeah, I heard about, well, everything. I'm sorry, Olivia." For what it's worth, Jack's been going through a rough patch, too. Tina's attempt at being diplomatic was awkward at best. "Oh?" I prompted, not sure I wanted to know but asking anyway. "He got married again. Had another kid, but things didn't go well. There were problems with the baby. He was born, not quite healthy. And then Jack got into trouble for not paying support. It's a mess." Tina's words tumbled out in a rush. Hearing about Jack's troubles stirred up a storm of emotions in me. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing him face consequences for once. But there was no joy in it, especially hearing about another child caught in the middle of his mess. "Life has a way of catching up with you, I guess," I said, my voice neutral. Tina nodded, awkwardly shifting from one foot to the other. "Yeah, it does. Look, Olivia, I know it's none of my business, but, are you alright? After everything?" I looked at Max, who was laughing, urging me to push him higher on the swings. "We're more than alright, Tina. We've moved on. And we're happy, really happy." That night, as I tucked Max into bed, I thought about Jack and his other child. My heart ached for that little one, caught in a situation they didn't choose. I whispered a silent prayer for them, hoping they'd find some peace amidst the chaos. Life with Max was a whirlwind of school runs, soccer games, and endless questions. He was my little man, growing up too fast, and I was doing my best to keep up. Our routine was hectic but happy, until one day, a blast from the past turned our world upside down. It was just another day, me and Max doing our usual grocery run, when out of nowhere, Linda, my ex-mother-in-law, shows up. It was like bumping into a ghost from a past life I'd worked hard to forget. As soon as she saw us, her eyes lit up, especially when they landed on Max. Without a second thought, she swooped in, trying to hug him. Max, who's not used to strangers, especially not her, hid behind me. "Olivia, let me see my grandson. He looks so healthy, not like the other one," Linda said, a twisted sort of pride in her voice that made my skin crawl. "Back off, Linda. You've got no right to come here and make demands. Especially talking like that about a sick child. It's disgusting," I snapped, putting myself between her and Max. She huffed, her face all twisted up in anger. "You can't keep me from him, Olivia. He's my grandson too. I have rights." "Yeah? Well, it's funny you suddenly remember you've got a grandson now. And as for rights, you lost those the minute you sided with Jack, calling me every name under the sun. Forget it. You're not coming anywhere near Max," I shot back, every word laced with years of pent-up frustration. We left her standing there, fuming. But it didn't end at the store. Later that day, she called, her voice all sweet and poisonous at the same time. "Olivia, you're making a mistake. I'll sue if I have to. I want to see my grandson. Linda threatened, thinking she could bully me into submission. I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady myself. You really want to go down that road, Linda? Because if we end up in court, I'll make sure everyone knows the kind of person you really are. How you treated me, how you talk about your other grandchild. You think a judge will look kindly on that? There was silence on the line for a few beats, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. You wouldn't dare, she finally hissed. Try me, Linda. I've kept my mouth shut for too long. But I'm done playing nice. Max and we're doing just fine without you. So, you go ahead and try your luck in court. We'll see how far it gets you. After a moment, she hung up, and that was the last I heard from her. I wasn't sure if she believed I'd follow through or if the thought of her dirty laundry being aired in public was too much for her. Either way, Max and I were left in peace. As I tucked him into bed that night, I thought about how far we'd come and how much we'd overcome. Everything's gonna be alright, buddy, I whispered, more to myself than to him. That night, I realized no matter what came our way, we'd face it together, just like we always had. And no one, not even Linda with her threats and bitterness, could take that away from us. Life after Linda's threat had been strangely peaceful. I'd braced for a storm that never came, and in its absence, Max and I found our rhythm again. That peace was shattered when Jack showed up out of the blue. It had been years since I last saw him, and here he was, standing at my door, looking worn and tired. Olivia, can we talk? Jack's voice was low, hesitant. I hesitated, my hand on the door, ready to close it on him and this part of my past. Talk? After all this time, you just show up and want to talk? I know I've got no right to ask anything of you. But I've been through a lot, and I've changed, Olivia. I need help, he said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. Changed? You think saying you've changed is enough? You walked away, Jack. You chose that path, not me. Max and we'd built a life without you. Why should I let you back into it? Jack looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I'm not asking to come back like nothing happened. I don't know where else to go. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the shell of the man I once loved. It would have been easy to feel pity, to open the door and let him back in. But life had taught me better. Jack, you need to understand something. It's not just about me anymore. There's Max to think about. And I won't let anyone hurt him or disrupt the life we have. You say you've changed, but I can't just take your word for it. You need to prove it, not for me, but for yourself. Jack nodded, a semblance of understanding dawning in his eyes. I get it, Olivia. I really do. I'll try to do better. That's all anyone can ask, Jack. But for now, you need to leave. Max and I have a life, a good one. And I'm not ready to risk that. He took a step back, finally lifting his eyes to meet mine. I understand. Take care of Max, Olivia. He deserves the best. I will, Jack. I always have. Closing the door on Jack was like closing a chapter of my life I never thought I'd revisit. It was hard, but in that moment, I knew I'd made the right decision. Later, as I watched Max play in the backyard, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the lawn, I realized how far we'd come. We'd faced down ghosts from our past and stood our ground, stronger and more united than ever. Mom, look. Max called, waving at me from his makeshift fort. I smiled, walking over to him. What is it, buddy? Just wanted to show you the fort. It's our castle, he said, his eyes shining with pride. Our castle, huh? I like the sound of that. It's our little kingdom, and we protect it together, I said, ruffling his hair. Yeah, together, Max agreed, a big grin on his face. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knew that no matter what the future held, we'd face it head-on, as a team. Our little family of two was a force to be reckoned with, built on love, resilience, and a firm stand against the challenges life threw our way. And that was all we needed. The college campus was buzzing with the kind of energy that you can only find in a place overflowing with young dreams and ambitions. That's where I met Ethan. We were both gunning for the same scholarship, the kind that not only covered tuition, but also bragging rights. It was big, it was what every nerd in our batch was after. And boy, did we clash over it. Seriously, Ethan? You think you can outdo me on the thesis? Dream on. I'd scoff at him across the library, my eyes barely lifting from my laptop. He'd just grin, that annoyingly confident smirk that drove me nuts. Ava, I'll see you at the finish line. Better bring your A game. We were both stubborn as hell, each convinced we were the rightful winner of that grant. Our debates got so heated, sometimes I thought we'd end up setting the lecture halls on fire with our arguments. Your argument on the economic theories is so half-baked, I could serve it for breakfast, Ethan once told me during a mock debate. The class had erupted in laughter, and I could feel my cheeks burning, not just from embarrassment but from the raging fire to prove him wrong. Oh, please, your so-called innovative perspective is just recycled trash. Heard it all before, Ethan, I shot back, not missing a beat. It wasn't just about the scholarship, it was a battle of wits, pride, and, unbeknownst to us at the time, a budding attraction that neither of us wanted to admit. Our rivalry was the talk of the campus. We were always at each other's throats, challenging one another to do better, be smarter. But as the final decision on the grant neared, something shifted between us. Maybe it was the late-night study sessions that ended in shared coffee breaks, or the way we'd inadvertently learn more about each other's lives beyond the books. You know, for a smartass, you're not that bad, I found myself saying one night as we left the library together, the campus quiet around us. Ethan chuckled, shoving his hands in his pockets. Look who's talking. I've seen you help the freshmen with their assignments. Not the heartless competitor everyone thinks. It was strange, this new dynamic. Our banter softened, tinged with a reluctant respect that slowly melted into something warmer. When the day of the scholarship announcement came, we sat next to each other, an unspoken truce between us. May the best man, or woman, win, Ethan whispered, his hand brushing mine. I remember the rush of emotions when they called my name. But what stood out more was the genuine smile on Ethan's face. Guess you were the best man after all, he said, his laughter mingling with mine. From that day forward, our relationship took a new turn. We were still competitive, but it was different. We challenged each other to be better, supported each other's dreams. Our arguments turned into discussions, our banter into inside jokes. And somewhere along the line, we stopped being rivals and started being something more. Moving in together was the easiest decision we'd ever made. It felt like the natural next step, a testament to how far we'd come from those two hot-headed students who couldn't stand to be in the same room unless it was to argue over academic theories. Our friends were shocked. You too? Really? They'd ask, disbelief written all over their faces. Yeah, really, we'd say, exchanging looks that spoke volumes of the journey we'd been on. From rivals to roommates to, dare I say, soulmates. Living with Ethan was like being in our little bubble. But bubbles are delicate, and ours was no exception, especially when it came to dealing with his folks. Martha and John were as traditional as they come, and our choice to live together without the whole marriage shebang didn't sit well with them. Not at all. It was like a broken record every time we saw them. You're living in sin, Ava. It's not right. Martha would start, her tone laced with disappointment and a touch of scorn. She was a pro at guilt trips, making sure to sprinkle in stories of her own purity. John and I didn't even kiss until we were married. Can you imagine? I tried to keep my cool, respect was important to me, but boy, was it hard. Martha, times have changed. People don't wait for marriage to be together anymore. It's normal. Ethan stood by me, bless him, but it was like talking to a wall with them. John would chime in, voice heavy with this sense of betrayed values. We raised you better, Ethan. You're supposed to be a decent man, not swayed by this. That's what I was to them. Never Ava, always this, as if I were some bad influence instead of the person their son loved. Ethan tried to bridge the gap. Mom, Dad, I love Ava. We're happy. Can't you just be happy for us? But nope, it was like everything he said just bounced off them. Martha, with her knack for drama, would clutch at her pearls, literally. Happy? How can we be happy when you're living in sin? It's not right, Ethan. You know it's not. The worst part? Ethan was caught in the crossfire. His folks made it seem like I had him under some spell. You've changed, son. This isn't you, John would say, shaking his head like Ethan was some puppet gone rogue. And me? I was trying not to lose it. I respected their beliefs, sure, but the constant judgment was a drag. I told Ethan as much. I get where they're coming from, but I'm not the enemy here. We're just living our lives. I know, he'd sigh, looking like he was carrying the world on his shoulders. It's just, they're my parents. I wish they could see how good we are together. In the end, it felt like we were stuck in this loop. Us trying to live our lives, them seeing it as some personal affront. It was exhausting, dealing with the endless lectures and the not-so-subtle digs at our life choices. But what could we do? They were his parents, and no amount of reasoning seemed to make a dent. So we kept on, living our sinful life, hoping one day they'd come around. Or at least, stop making every dinner feel like a trial where we were always found guilty. Just when I thought Martha and John's nagging couldn't get any worse, they hit us with a new plan. You both need guidance, Martha announced one evening, her tone more determined than ever. We've arranged for you to meet with Father Mike. He'll set you straight. Ethan and I exchanged a look. The kind that said, "Are you kidding me?" without needing words. Mom, really? We don't need a priest to tell us how to live our lives. Ethan tried to reason, his patience wearing thin. But Martha was on a mission, and when Martha got going, there was no stopping her. It's not up for discussion, Ethan. You're going, and that's final. It's for your own good. So there we were, a few days later, sitting uncomfortably in Father Mike's office, a cozy little room filled with religious books and those cliché inspirational posters. Father Mike was a kind-looking man, but the situation was just absurd. Now, I understand there's some concern about your living arrangements? Father Mike began, peering over his glasses at us. I bit my tongue, really wanting to say something snarky, but managed to keep it civil. We're fine, really. It's just that Ethan's parents are a bit traditional. Father Mike nodded, as if this wasn't the first time he'd been dragged into a family squabble. Marriage is a sacred union, but so is love and respect for one another. Are you two committed to each other? Ethan took my hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Yes, we are. Completely. The priest smiled, then turned to some of his books, probably looking for some wise quote to throw at us. But before he could get into it, Ethan cut in. Look, Father, we appreciate what you're trying to do, but we're happy. Isn't that what matters? Father Mike looked at us, then, after a long pause, he closed his book. You're right. Happiness and commitment are what truly matter. Maybe it's not me who needs to guide you, but perhaps I can help your parents understand your choices. That meeting didn't magically fix everything, but it was a start. Or so we thought. Martha and John thanked Father Mike for his time, but seemed to ignore the whole happiness and commitment are what truly matter part. Instead, they focused on the sacred union bit. See? Even Father Mike agrees. You two need to get married, Martha insisted, completely missing the point. Ethan and I just looked at each other, the reality of the situation sinking in. No matter what we did, it seemed like his parents would never be satisfied. It was like banging our heads against a brick wall. Let's just get married and get it over with, I muttered to Ethan on our way home, half joking, but also half desperate for some peace. Ethan sighed, the weight of the world on his shoulders. I'll do anything if it means they'll finally leave us alone. Little did we know, that decision to give in would open a whole new can of worms. But at that moment, all we wanted was a break from the constant pressure. If a wedding was what it took, then so be it. The wedding was something straight out of a fairy tale, or so I thought. I pulled out all the stops to make sure it was an event that would make Martha and John happy, given their traditional views. The church was decked out in flowers, the music was solemn yet uplifting, and I was dressed in a gown that was the very definition of elegance. Even Martha, who could rival a statue when it came to showing emotions, shed a few tears during the ceremony. But, of course, there was a catch. My friends, who'd been my rock through this whole ordeal, came dressed to kill. They looked amazing, but apparently, their style was a bit too much for Martha. "Did you see how they're dressed?" she whispered to me, right in the middle of the reception. "It's a wedding, not a nightclub." I could feel my cheeks burning, not sure if it was from anger or embarrassment. "Martha, they're my friends. They're here to celebrate with us. Can we just focus on that?" She clucked her tongue, shaking her head like I'd just failed the world's easiest test. "I'm just saying. A little modesty wouldn't hurt." After we caved and got hitched, Martha and John must have thought they snagged an all-access pass to our place. No kidding, they started popping by every single day. If you ever needed a live demo of what too much looks like, this was it. One Saturday morning, there's a knock that could wake the dead. I'm talking 6 a.m., and these two are at our door like they're about to miss a flight. Ethan, barely awake, trudges to the door, and there they are, bright and chipper. "Good morning. We thought we'd spend the day together." Martha chirps, pushing past Ethan like it's the most normal thing in the world. I'm in the kitchen, drowning my sorrows in coffee, when John starts critiquing my choice of breakfast. "You know, a hearty breakfast is important. Is this even food?" He's eyeballing my cereal like it's from another planet. "Eggs and bacon were fine for you, right?" I mutter under my breath, not in the mood to start my day off with a lecture on nutritional values. Then, Martha, bless her heart, decides to give me a rundown on cleanliness. "Ava, dear, have you considered organizing your cupboards a bit more? And maybe using some coasters? Water rings on the table are such an eyesore." I'm biting my tongue so hard it's a miracle I still have it. Ethan sees me clenching my fists and jumps in. "Mom, Dad, you know, we really appreciate your visits, but maybe we could do with a bit of space?" You'd think he'd ask them to move to Mars by the looks on their faces. "Space? But we're family. We just want to be close to you too," John says, utterly baffled by the concept of personal boundaries. Martha's on the verge of tears now, playing the guilt card like a pro. "Do you not want us here? After everything we've done for you?" It's like walking on eggshells. You try to set some ground rules, and suddenly you're the villain in their soap opera. I hit my breaking point on a Thursday evening, the kind that started with the same old surprise visit from Martha and John and ended with me locking myself in the bathroom, just to get a minute of peace. "This has got to stop," I muttered to Ethan as we lay in bed, the moon casting a soft glow through our window. "Your folks are driving me nuts. It's like we're living in a reality show, but there's no escaping the cameras." Ethan, looking as worn out as I felt, let out a long sigh. "I know, babe. It's getting to me too. What do we do, though? They're my parents." But this is our home. We can't keep living like this," I shot back, my frustration bubbling over. "We need space. Real space. Maybe we should move. Like, actually move." Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, eyeing me like I'd just suggested we join the circus. "Move? Like, pack up everything and just go?" "Why not?" I was half serious, half desperate. "Your parents can't drop by if we're not here, right?" The idea seemed radical, even to me, but the more we talked about it, the less crazy it seemed. We started to imagine a life where dinner wasn't interrupted by unannounced visits or our weekends weren't planned around avoiding his parents. "Okay, let's say we do this. Where would we go?" Ethan asked, the gears in his head turning. I don't know. Somewhere close enough to keep our jobs but far enough that it's not just a hop, skip, and a jump for your mom and dad, I suggested, warming to the idea. The decision felt right, almost liberating. We started house hunting online, looking for a place that could be our fresh start, far away from unannounced morning visits and constant criticism. It wasn't long before we found it, a cozy little house in a neighboring city. It was perfect, and the best part? I could buy it with the money I'd inherited from my grandmother. This wasn't just a new house, it was a statement. My money, my rules. A fresh slate on our terms. They're going to flip, Ethan said, dreading the conversation. Mom's going to think we're abandoning them. Maybe, I conceded, but we're not doing this to hurt them. We're doing it for us, for our sanity. They'll just have to understand. The conversation went as well as we'd feared. There were tears, accusations, and a lot of guilt being thrown around. But we stood our ground, knowing this was the right move for us. We did it, I said to Ethan as we signed the papers, the weight of the world lifting off our shoulders. The move was hectic, filled with boxes and goodbyes and the promise of peace. We kept our jobs, commuting a bit further than before, but every mile was worth it for the tranquility that greeted us at the end of the day. Our new life in the neighboring city was everything we'd hoped for. We fell back into our old rhythms, enjoying the quiet and the privacy we'd missed so much. The in-laws? We kept in touch through the internet, a safe buffer that allowed us to control the narrative and the visits. It was a compromise, but a necessary one. Our calls were polite, the conversations brief and infrequent, but it was enough to keep the peace. Just when Ethan and I thought we'd found our slice of peace in the new city, life decided to throw us a curveball. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where you just want to laze around and enjoy the calm. That's when the doorbell rang, shattering the silence. Who could that be? I murmured, not expecting anyone. We weren't exactly social butterflies, especially not here, not yet. Ethan shrugged, equally puzzled, and strolled over to the door. When he opened it, his puzzled look morphed into outright disbelief. There, on our doorstep, stood Martha and John, each with a suitcase bigger than the last time they'd criticized our breakfast choices. Surprise! Martha exclaimed, her smile wide enough to split her face. John just nodded, his usual taciturn self, but even he seemed to wear a small grin. What are? How did you? Why? Ethan's eloquence was gone, replaced by staccato confusion. We've decided to move in, Martha declared as if announcing they'd won the lottery. It's time we all lived together, as a family should. My mind raced. This had to be a joke, a very bad one. Move in? With us? I echoed, hoping I'd misunderstood. Yes, dear. We sold our house. We're here to stay, Martha said, pushing past Ethan, making herself at home as if she hadn't just dropped a bombshell on our doorstep. Ethan and I exchanged a look of sheer panic. You can't just decide to move in with us, I managed to say, finally finding his voice. Martha and John weren't just shocked at our refusal, they were outraged. You can't possibly expect us to leave. We're family, and this house, it's as much our son's as it is yours, Martha asserted, her voice a mix of indignation and disbelief. John, usually more reserved, joined in with a surprising fierceness. Exactly. Ethan's our son, and you're living here, thanks to him. You're just a freeloader, making decisions that aren't yours to make. I could barely contain my laughter, not because it was funny, but because of the sheer audacity. Ethan's face was a picture of shock, turning to me with wide eyes as if to say, "Are they serious?" Hold on a minute, I said, still chuckling as I went to retrieve a folder from our home office. I flipped it open to a very important document, the deed to the house. I made sure they could see it clearly. See this? This house was bought with the money I inherited from my grandmother. I am the sole owner. So, actually, it's entirely up to me who lives here. And you, I pointed squarely at Martha and John, are not staying. Martha's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, while John's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. Ethan stepped beside me, a proud yet stern look on his face. You heard her. Ava bought this house. Not me, not us, Ava. And we've decided together that moving in uninvited isn't an option. After I dropped the bombshell about owning the house, Martha tried to play her final card, all but declaring squatters' rights on account of Ethan living with me. He's our son. We have every right to be wherever he is. We're family, and that means we stay together, she announced, puffing up like a peacock. I couldn't help it, a laugh escaped me before I could clamp it down. This was it, the moment I'd been keeping close to the chest for just such an occasion. Well, here's a fun fact for you, I said, the smile on my face growing wider by the second. Ethan and I? We're not actually married. Not legally, anyway. The wedding was for show, to get you off our backs about living in sin. The look on Martha and John's faces? Priceless. Like they'd swallowed lemons whole. What do you mean not married? That whole ceremony. Martha's voice trailed off, her brain unable to compute. Yep, a ceremony without the paperwork. So, technically, you're not my in-laws. And this, I gestured around, is my house. Ethan's just living with me. My rules, my decision who stays and who goes. John's face went through 50 shades of red, anger, and embarrassment battling for dominance. You can't just, that's not how things are done. Ethan stepped up then, his tone steady but firm. Mom, Dad, I love Ava. And I'm tired, so tired, of the way you've treated us, her especially. We did what we had to live our lives on our terms. It's time you went home. Martha, not one to go down without a fight, turned her frustration into a weapon. Ethan, you listen here. You're going to leave this woman, and come with us. She's tricked you, manipulated you. But Ethan was unmovable, a rock in the storm. No, Mom. I'm staying. With Ava. I love her, even if we're not married by your standards. It's my life, our life, and it's time you respected that. The standoff in our living room was tense, a silent battle of wills. But in the end, Martha and John had no choice but to leave, their departure a mix of rage and disbelief. As the door closed behind them, the silence that settled was profound, a mix of relief and the sobering realization of the bridge we'd just burned. Ethan and I looked at each other, a single thought between us, no matter what, we were in this together. After Martha and John huffed out of our place, tails between their legs, word got around through the grapevine that their big move was all a bluff. They never sold their house, it was just a ploy to muscle in on us, thinking they could pull one over and make themselves comfy at our expense. Can you believe that? The nerve of some people. But hey, here we are, still in our own little slice of heaven, shaking our heads at the whole mess. Can you imagine if they actually had sold their house? I said to Ethan one evening, the two of us sprawled out on the couch, enjoying the peace and quiet. Ethan chuckled, a deep, hearty sound that filled the room. That would have been a disaster. Good thing they're too attached to their precious home to actually go through with it. We got to talking about the future, just the two of us, figuring out where we go from here. So, what do you think about making it official, after if we're lucky enough to have a kid? Ethan asked, a bit hesitantly. I thought about it, turning the idea over in my mind. I guess. Might make things simpler, paperwork-wise. But I don't need a piece of paper to tell me I'm yours. Yes, I feel the same. It's just us, Ava. Always has been, always will be. Screw anyone who thinks they can dictate how we live our lives, Ethan said, his voice firm with conviction. It was settled then. We'd cross that bridge when we came to it, but for now, we were content. Just Ava and Ethan against the world, no legal documents needed to validate what we had. Our love was the real deal, stamps in the passports or not. And as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that feeling of us against the world only grew stronger. We were a team, and nothing, not even sneaky in-laws with their bizarre schemes, could tear us apart. As for Martha and John, well, they kept their distance. Maybe they learned their lesson, maybe not. But one thing was for sure, Ethan and I were untouchable, living our lives on our own terms, in our own time. The future looked bright from where we were sitting, a blank canvas ready to be filled with love, laughter, and maybe, just maybe, the pitter-patter of tiny feet. But until then, we were just fine enjoying the peace, thankful for every quiet moment we had together in our little sanctuary. Born into a world where my last name opens more doors than I care to walk through, you could say I had it all laid out for me. My dad's the big boss of a company you've probably seen tick across the stock exchange screen more times than you've cursed the morning alarm. Yes, that kind of rich. But if you're expecting tales of a golden girl, draped in designer and sipping champagne for breakfast, you've got the wrong story. Me? I've always kept it real, feet firmly on the ground. Money's nice, sure, but it's not everything. I chose a different path, one that's led me to places money can't buy and experiences no gold card can fetch. Charity work, helping those in need, and living a life that's, well, ordinary. That's me, Jessica. Not the heiress, just Jessica. So, I was stuck in one of those typical evenings where my friend Sarah decided we all needed to get out more. We ended up at this dive bar downtown, the kind where the beer's cheap and the lights are dim enough to hide your regrets. Sarah was all hyped up, going on about some guy she met online. "You've gotta meet him, Jess. He's totally your type," she kept saying. My type? Since when did she decide she knew my type? Anyway, we're there, and in walks this guy. Not Sarah's online prince, but another dude, Alex. He was there with some friends, looking as out of place as a cat at a dog show. He wasn't dressed to impress, just a simple tee, jeans, and this easy smile that kind of lit up the room. We got to talking, and it was easy. Like, really easy. He worked some manager job at a place I'd never heard of, nothing fancy, but he talked about it with this passion that was kinda infectious. "You really dig your job, huh?" I remember asking, sipping on my third beer. "Absolutely," Alex shot back, leaning in. "Every day's a challenge. But hey, I'm not here to bore you with work talk. What about you?" Sarah mentioned charity work. I shrugged, trying to downplay it. "Yes, a bit of this and that. Just trying to do my bit, you know?" "That's cool. Really cool," he said, and I could tell he meant it. Not in a trying to impress you sort of way, but genuinely. The night rolled on, our group mingling, but Alex and I kind of stuck together, chatting about everything and nothing. It was refreshing, talking to someone who wasn't trying to sell me on some investment or brag about their latest acquisition. As the night was winding down, Alex got this look in his eye, like he was working up to something. "Hey, Jessica, I know this is kind of forward, but would you want to grab dinner with me sometime? Just us?" I remember feeling this mix of surprise and excitement. "Sure," I said, trying to sound cool about it. "I'd like that." On the way home, Sarah was all giggles and "I told you so's." I just smiled, thinking about the evening. Alex was a breath of fresh air in my often too stale world. Little did I know how much things were about to change. It wasn't long before going out turned into hanging out at each other's places, which, let's be real, mostly meant my cozy apartment because Alex's roommates were a circus and a half. One evening, sprawled on the couch after devouring what might be the world's most average takeout pizza, Alex turned to me, his eyes serious, but his tone light. "Jessica, how do you feel about making this a more permanent arrangement?" he asked, crumbs still clinging to the corner of his mouth. I raised an eyebrow. "You proposing we split a Netflix account or something more along the lines of a lease?" He chuckled, brushing off the crumbs. "Well, I was thinking more like a life together. But hey, we can start with Netflix." The simplicity of it, the straightforwardness, no grand gestures or dramatic backdrops, just us, in our element. It felt right. Alex, if you're asking what I think you're asking. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. And just like that, with the aroma of cheap pizza as our witness, we decided to tie the knot. It was swift, sure, but when you know, you know. Telling our families was the next hurdle. My folks, well, they've always been about the "as long as you're happy" mantra, but this was putting it to the test. Dad, with his business empire, and Mom, the socialite, they had visions of me settling down with someone more in our circle. I broke the news over dinner, the fancy kind, where you're not sure which fork to use for the salad. Mom, Dad, I'm getting married to Alex, I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. Dad paused, fork midair. Alex? The manager chap? Well, that's quick. Mom simply smiled, a bit too tightly. Dear, are you sure? This is rather sudden, isn't it? But I was firm. Yes, I'm sure. He's amazing, and we're really happy together. Their skepticism was palpable, but so was their love. Well, if he makes you happy, darling, Mom conceded, and Dad nodded in agreement. Alex's folks were a whole different ball game. We went over to their place, a cozy little house that seemed always to smell like fresh cookies, or something equally comforting. Judy and Martin, they were as down-to-earth as they come, and they welcomed me like I'd always been a part of the family. Alex tells us you're setting a date? Martin asked, passing me a plate of those infamous cookies. Yes, we're thinking sooner rather than later. Small ceremony, nothing fancy, I replied, trying to gauge their reaction. Judy beamed. Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We're just thrilled for you both. Their warmth was enveloping, a stark contrast to the cautious optimism of my own parents. It was clear, right from the get-go, that our worlds were different, but the common ground was the genuine happiness for me and Alex. Planning the wedding, we were on the same page, keep it simple, keep it us. A small ceremony, close friends and family, and an open bar because, as Alex put it, if we're doing this, we're making sure everyone's having a good time. And that's how it went down. A swift engagement, not because we were rushing, but because everything just clicked into place. Amid the whirlwind, there were quiet moments, looks shared between us that said, we're doing the right thing. And we really were. Living with Alex started off as everything I'd hoped for and more. We were like two peas in a pod, making our little corner of the world in that cozy, modern apartment I had rented. It was ours, filled with love, laughter, and a ton of takeout containers, because, let's face it, neither of us were winning any awards in the kitchen. It wasn't long before I started noticing how Alex's parents, Judy and Martin, had this way of dropping hints about things they liked or needed whenever they came over. At first, it was subtle, almost cute. Oh, Jessica, that's a lovely coffee maker. Must make mornings a breeze, Judy would say, eyeing our shiny new appliance with a gleam in her eye. Or Martin, this sofa is just divine. Our old one's been giving me a right pain in the back, you know. Wanting to be the good daughter-in-law, I'd surprise them with gifts here and there. A coffee maker for Judy, a comfortable new sofa for their living room, and so on. Their initial reactions were always the same, a mix of surprise and a little bit of guilt. Oh, Jessica, you shouldn't have. This is too much, Judy would exclaim, her hands fluttering to her chest. But, you know, humans are funny creatures. Give them an inch, and they'll take a mile. Those initial protests faded away, replaced by a growing list of subtle hints that were about as subtle as a brick through a window. Dinner at your folks' place was lovely, dear. Did you see that new TV they have? Crystal clear. Ours is practically ancient. Alex would relay his parents' latest comments, oblivious to the change in their tone. One evening, after I'd just dropped a not-so-small fortune on a fancy new TV for them, Alex and I were curled up on the couch, my head resting in his lap. They really loved the TV, babe. You're amazing, you know that, he said, his fingers running through my hair. I sighed, the weight of their expectations starting to press down on me. Alex, do they expect us to keep doing this? It's getting a bit much, don't you think? He paused, his hand stopping mid-stroke. What do you mean? They're just happy, that's all. Happy or taking advantage? I pushed back, sitting up to look at him. It feels like we're their personal shopping service. Alex was taken aback, his brow furrowing. They're not like that, Jess. They're just not used to nice things, that's all. But where does it end, Alex? It's like they've got a taste for it now, and they're not looking back, I argued, frustration creeping into my voice. The conversation ended with an uneasy truce, but it was clear we were on different pages. Judy and Martin's gratitude had morphed into entitlement, and it was putting a strain on me. I loved Alex, but I wasn't about to become a bottomless ATM for his parents. When my dad's company hit the skids, it felt like the rug was yanked out from under my feet. That cushy life? Poof, gone. And with it, the whole dynamic of my relationship took a nosedive. The shift wasn't gradual, it was like flipping a switch from daylight to darkness. I had to break the news to Alex and his folks, and let me tell you, that was a conversation I'd been dreading. Listen up, things are gonna get tight. Dad's company's tanking, and well, we're in for a rough ride, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but the tremor was there, betraying my nerves. Alex's reaction was a gut punch. You're kidding me, right? What do you mean things are gonna get tight? You're telling me we can't live like we used to because of your dad's mess? His words were like ice, and for a second, I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Judy and Martin's faces were no better, their disappointment barely masked. This is quite the situation you put us in, Jessica, Martin added, his tone dripping with reproach. And just like that, the warmth and camaraderie we once shared evaporated, replaced by this cold expectation that somehow, I was to blame for my family's financial downturn. Moving in with them was hell dressed up as a temporary solution. Our once independent life got swapped for a guest room that felt more like a cell in the house of the two people who clearly saw us as a nuisance. The atmosphere was charged with tension, every day a reminder that I'd somehow failed them. We're cutting back on everything because of this, Judy would remind me, her voice sharp, as she served dinner that was a far cry from the lavish meals we used to enjoy. And Martin, always with a comment on saving costs. Make sure those lights are off. We're not running a charity here. But Alex, he was the hardest to bear. The man I married seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who saw me as a letdown. Can't you do something? Talk to your dad? It's like you don't even care we're living like this. He'd snap, anger flaring over the smallest things. Our conversations, once easy and filled with future plans, now were minefields. Every word I said was a potential trigger for another outburst. I thought marrying you meant security, not this struggle, he'd throw at me during arguments, his words slicing through me. It was clear we weren't just dealing with financial stress. This was a test of our relationship, a revelation of true colors under pressure. I was stuck in the middle, battling the disillusionment from my husband and his parents, while grappling with my own sense of failure. Judy's birthday dinner was supposed to be this cozy family thing at some upscale restaurant, a break from the constant tension. But it turned into the showdown of a lifetime. I should have seen it coming, the way things had been going at their place. We're all sitting there, menu in hand, and I'm trying to keep the peace, just blend into the background. That plan got torpedoed the second orders started flying. Alex, with this grin that made my skin crawl, goes, "Let's get the steak and the lobster for us," and he throws a look my way, 1 part smug, 2 parts cruel. Jessica can do with the soup of the day. Gotta save where we can, right? They all laugh like it's the best joke they've heard in ages. Judy adds her 2 cents. Absolutely, can't have Jessica overspending now, can we? I felt this flush of heat, not embarrassment, but pure fury. Really? Soup? What's this, some kind of sick joke? I snapped back, my voice sharper than I intended. Oh, come on, Jessica. It's just a bit of fun, Alex said, that smirk still plastered on his face. That's when I lost it. Fun? This is your idea of fun? When the chips are down, you just show how petty you really are. I can't believe I fell for your act." You could hear a pin drop. The whole restaurant was watching now, the awkwardness off the charts. I didn't sit back down. "Keep your fancy dishes and your pathetic jokes. I'm out," I said, standing up so fast my chair nearly toppled over. The noise echoed, turning more heads our way. Alex reached out, trying to play the peacemaker. "Jessica, don't. Let's not make this a scene." "A scene? You think I care about making a scene after that stunt? This is about respect, something you clearly have none of." I yanked my arm free and made for the exit, the weight of their stares on my back. Stepping out into the night felt like breaking out of prison. My phone was blowing up, Alex no doubt, trying to do damage control. I ignored it, my mind made up. I drove back to their place, a storm of emotions brewing inside. How had things gone so sour? Alex and I were a team, or so I thought. But that dinner? It was a slap in the face, a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Back at the house, I packed my bags in record time, each folded shirt a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. It wasn't just about leaving a place, it was about leaving a relationship that had shown its true colors. I turned off my phone, cutting off the barrage of messages. The silence was eerie, but welcome. That night wasn't just the end of a disastrous dinner, it was the close of a chapter one had no interest in revisiting. After the disaster that was Judy's birthday dinner, I found myself driving to my parents' house. The night was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. By the time I pulled up to their driveway, my decision was made. I needed sanctuary, yes, but more than that, I needed advice, something only my dad could offer. Walking into the house, the familiarity of it all was both comforting and jarring. Mom was asleep, but Dad was up, sitting in his study, surrounded by papers that seemed less important the moment I stepped in. "Jessica? What are you doing here at this hour? Is everything okay?" He stood up, concern etching his face. I took a deep breath, the events of the evening pouring out of me in a flood. I told him about the dinner, about Alex and his parents, and how I felt like I'd been reduced to nothing but a source of income for them. Dad listened in silence, his expression hardening with every word. When I finished, he sighed, a sound that carried years of experience and a hint of sorrow. "Jessica, I saw this coming. I just hoped I was wrong," he finally said, his voice steady but filled with empathy. "How could I have been so blind, Dad?" "I thought Alex. I thought we were different," I said, feeling the weight of my naivety. He walked over, putting an arm around my shoulders. "You wanted to see the best in him, in them. There's no fault in that. But people show their true colors in tough times. It's a hard lesson, but an important one." I nodded, the reality of his words sinking in. "But what do I do now? I can't go back there." "You'll stay here, for starters. As for the rest, we'll figure it out together," he assured me, his confidence a balm to my frayed nerves. Then, he shared something that took me by surprise. "You know, the company's situation isn't as dire as it seems. We're actually on the verge of a breakthrough." It was a strategic move, a way to weed out the opportunists. I stared at him, stunned. "So, you mean to say we're not broke?" He chuckled, a sound that was part relief, part amusement. "Far from it. But it was important to see who would stick around when the chips were down. Unfortunately, Alex and his family showed their true selves. The revelation was a lot to process. My anger towards Alex and his parents was now mixed with a sense of vindication. They had revealed their true motives, and in doing so, had freed me from a future of manipulation and deceit. "Dad, I don't know whether to be relieved or furious," I admitted, the emotions battling inside me. "Be both. It's okay. But remember, this experience has taught you something invaluable about people and their intentions. Use it, learn from it," he advised, his words grounding me. Walking up to Judy and Martin's house the next day felt like heading into the lion's den. I was ready for a showdown, but nothing could have prepared me for the cold reception I got. Alex was standing there, divorce papers in hand, with a look that could only be described as triumphant disdain. "Here you go. Let's get this over with," he said, practically shoving the papers at me. His parents were hovering behind, barely containing their glee. "Finally getting rid of the freeloader." Judy snickered, and Martin nodded in agreement, a smug smile plastered across his face. Alex joined in. "Yes, turns out you're just an ordinary dummy without your daddy's money. Thought you'd cry, but guess what? We don't need a tearful mess around here." Their words stung, but not in the way they expected. I felt a bizarre mix of anger and liberation. I looked at the papers, then at them, and without a word, signed where I needed to. As I did, their smiles widened, thinking they'd won. But I had the last laugh. Pulling out a newspaper from my bag, I slapped it down on the table with more force than necessary. "Thought you might find this interesting," I said, my voice dripping with unrestrained satisfaction. The headline screamed about my dad's company making a monumental comeback, profits soaring higher than ever. Watching their faces drain of color was a sight I'd pay to see again. Judy and Martin's smugness vanished, replaced by shock, then desperation. Alex's arrogance crumbled, leaving him looking like a child who'd just lost his favorite toy. Judy suddenly switched gears, stepping towards me with arms wide open. "Oh, my sweet girl, it's all a big misunderstanding. Let's hug it out." Martin, ever the opportunist, chimed in. "Let's not rush things. Sit down, have a coffee, and we can talk this through." And Alex, oh, Alex, he was the picture of regret. "I was wrong, okay? We can fix this. I want to make everything right. Please." Their sudden change of heart was almost comical. Almost. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, hearty sound that felt cleansing. "You three are something else, you know that? But here's a newsflash for you, I'm done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, and the so-called family that only values me for my bank account." I turned to leave, their protests and pleas fading into the background. They called after me, a mix of desperation and disbelief in their voices, but I didn't look back. Not this time. After the spectacle at Judy and Martin's house, I was done. Not just with them, but with the whole sorry saga that had become my life. I needed a fresh start, a clean slate. So, I took some time, holed up at my folks' place, getting my head and heart back in the game. One afternoon, a couple of weeks after the divorce was finalized, I was out for coffee with Sarah, my ever-supportive friend who had been there through it all. "Girl, you look like a weight's been lifted," she commented, sipping her latte. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. "You have no idea. It's like I can finally breathe again." Sarah leaned in, her expression turning serious. "So, what's next for you, Jess? You've got a clean slate now." I thought about it, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I'm not sure, but I'm excited to find out. Maybe I'll travel, pick up some of the charity work I had to put on hold. As for love," I paused, giving her a wry smile. "I think I'll give that a miss for a while. Just make sure you're doing what makes you happy, okay? You deserve it after all that drama," she said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Thanks, Sarah. That's the plan." Not long after that conversation, my phone started buzzing with calls and messages from Alex. He was pleading, saying he'd changed, that we could start over. His parents even got in on the act, sending messages filled with apologies and invitations to talk things over. Sitting in my room, phone in hand, I couldn't help but laugh. The sheer audacity was almost admirable. Almost. I typed out a response, one I'd been mulling over for days. "Alex, moving on means moving forward, not going back to what broke you. I wish you all the best, but this is where our paths end for good. Take care." Hitting send felt like closing the final chapter of a book I'd been stuck in for too long. And just like that, I was ready to start writing a new one. The next few months were a blur of activity. I threw myself into my work, took up volunteering with a vengeance, and even booked a solo trip to a place I'd always wanted to visit. Life was full, and for the first time in a long while, it was fulfilling too. One evening, sitting on a balcony overlooking a bustling street in a far-off city, I realized I'd found what I'd been searching for all along: peace. The drama, the heartache, the betrayal, it all seemed like a distant memory. My phone buzzed with a new message, but this time, it was from a number I didn't recognize. Hesitantly, I opened it. It was from someone I'd met during my travels, someone who'd made me laugh and think in equal measure. "Hey, Jessica. How about dinner when you're back? No expectations, just food and good company." I stared at the message, a smile slowly spreading across my face. Maybe it was time to open my heart again, but on my terms, at my pace. "Yes, I'd like that," I typed back, hitting send before I could second-guess myself. Looking out at the city lights, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. I had moved on, not just from Alex and his family, but from the person I was when I was with them. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. I wasn't looking for love, not really. At 28, I was a rising star at my finance firm. Spreadsheets were my love language, and my cubicle felt more like home than any bar or dating app ever could. Then came Sarah's rooftop party. Sarah, my coworker and best friend, had a knack for dragging me out of my comfort zone. This time, it was a mixed crowd, a bunch of artists and musicians Sarah knew, and a few of the more normal people from the office. That's where I saw him. He was arguing, well, more like playfully sparring, with a guy over the best way to restore a brick building. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and a mess of dark brown hair that looked like he just ran his fingers through it. He wore a worn leather jacket over a faded t-shirt that probably had a band logo I wouldn't recognize. The opposite of my usual button-down and slacks crowd, but something about him drew me in. "So, you think slapping a fresh coat of paint on history is a good idea?" he was saying, a playful smile on his face. The other guy, a stocky dude with a shaved head, rolled his eyes. "Hey, it preserves the structure, right?" "Yeah, but it erases the character," the guy in the leather jacket countered. "The cracks and the wear, that's what tells the story." I found myself walking closer, drawn to their easy banter. Just then, Sarah appeared beside me, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Amelia, this is Mark," she said, nudging me forward. "Mark, this is Amelia, the spreadsheet wizard I was telling you about." Mark turned, his smile widening when he saw me. "Spreadsheet wizard, huh? Sounds impressive." "It pays the bills," I replied, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. "But I can also hold my own in a conversation that doesn't involve amortization schedules." I winked at Sarah, who snickered. "Challenge accepted," Mark said, his voice warm and inviting. "So, Amelia the spreadsheet wizard, what do you think about preserving history?" We ended up talking for hours, about everything and nothing. He was an architect, passionate about restoring old buildings and giving them new life. I told him about my crazy hours at the firm and the satisfaction of closing a big deal. There were no awkward silences, just a comfortable flow of conversation that felt effortless. As the night wound down, we found ourselves standing by the railing, overlooking the city skyline. The air was cool, and goosebumps prickled my arms. "This was fun," I admitted, surprised by the slight tremor in my voice. "Yeah," he agreed, his gaze fixed on the glittering cityscape. I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime." "Me neither," I blurted out, before I could overthink it. We met with Mark's parents, Martha and Arthur, at a fancy restaurant they picked. The conversation flowed easily enough, at first. We talked about the wedding plans, the venue I'd booked, a beautiful old converted library, and the caterer I was stressing over. Turns out organic, locally sourced canapés are a pricey business. Then, things took a weird turn. Martha, mid-bite of her lobster bisque, which she pronounced bisky with a forced accent, suddenly fixed me with a steely gaze. "So, Amelia," she said, dabbing her lips with a napkin, "Mark tells me you work in finance?" "Yes, I'm a financial analyst at a large firm downtown," I replied, unsure where this was going. "Analyst, huh?" Sounds important, Arthur chimed in, his voice booming across the table. You must do well for yourself. Mark, who had been mostly quiet up until this point, cleared his throat. Dad, come on. That's not what we're talking about. Just making conversation, son, Arthur said, waving his hand dismissively. He turned back to me. So, Amelia, you mentioned a firm? Big name, I presume? I told him the name of the firm, a global player in the financial world. A satisfied smile spread across Martha's face. Excellent, she declared. And you say you do well for yourself? Investments? Stocks? That kind of thing? Yes, I manage a portfolio, I replied, feeling increasingly uncomfortable. This felt more like an interrogation than a meeting with my future in-laws. A portfolio, huh? Martha leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. How much are we talking about here, dear? My jaw dropped. This was outrageous. Nobody, not even family, asked questions like that. I glanced at Mark, hoping he'd step in, but he just avoided my gaze, fiddling with his breadbasket. That's really personal information, Mrs. Miller, I said, forcing a smile. Oh, come on, honey, Martha huffed. We're practically family now. Isn't that right, Mark? Mark mumbled something non-committal, his cheeks flushed pink. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Look, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Money isn't everything. Mark and I love each other, and that's what matters most. Love is great, sweetheart, Arthur chimed in again. But let's face it, love doesn't pay the bills. I took a deep breath. This dinner was turning into a disaster. Maybe we should stick to talking about the wedding, I suggested, hoping to change the subject. The next morning, I called my grandma. As soon as I hung up with her after recounting the dinner with Mark's parents, a wave of doubt washed over me. Her words, greedy and selfish people, echoed in my head. But I brushed it off. Grandma could be a bit old-fashioned sometimes. Sure, Martha and Arthur were a little blunt, but they seemed genuinely happy for us. Maybe they were just a bit awkward when it came to expressing their emotions. Fast forward a few months, and wedding planning was in full swing. Everything, from the venue to the flowers, felt like pulling teeth. Whenever money came up, Mark would give a sheepish shrug and say, "Work's been a bit tight lately." His parents, bless their hearts, kept offering suggestions, cheaper venues outside the city limits, a family friend who did amazing catering for a discount meaning they'd barter for vegetables from their neighbor's garden. Needless to say, I ended up footing most of the bill. Mark, ever the charmer, would say things like, "You're amazing, honey. Handling everything like a champ." But his lack of financial contribution started to grate on me. Finally, the big day arrived. It was beautiful, the weather cooperated, the food was delicious, and most importantly, Mark and I said "I do." The only sour note was Grandma. After the ceremony, she pulled me aside, her wrinkled face etched with concern. "Amelia, honey," she said, her voice low, "be careful with those in-laws of yours. They don't have your best interests at heart." I rolled my eyes. Here we go again. "Grandma, they're just excited. They love Mark, they love me. Everything's fine." The honeymoon phase was barely over, the leftover wedding cake still sitting on the counter, when the first major in-law incident occurred. It was a Sunday morning, and Mark and I were still luxuriating in bed when a loud thump from downstairs shattered the peaceful silence. We exchanged a confused look, then Mark mumbled, "Probably the mail." Wrong. The thump was followed by a cacophony of rustling paper and muffled exclamations. Throwing on robes, we hurried downstairs to find a scene that could have been ripped straight out of a horror movie. Well, a horror movie with a lot of floral wrapping paper and gaudy gift bags. Martha and Arthur were sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by wedding presents like vultures picking over a carcass. They were tearing into boxes, oohing and awing over some items, tossing others aside with dismissive grunts. "What in the world is going on here?" I demanded, my voice laced with disbelief. Martha, mid-unwrap, looked up and flashed a megawatt smile. Amelia, darling. Just admiring your lovely wedding gifts. Admiring? I sputtered. It looks more like you're ransacking the place. Arthur, holding up a crystal vase and squinting at it, snorted. Relax, sweetheart. Just sorting things out. Can't have all this clutter lying around, can we? Clutter? These were gifts, chosen with love, hopefully, by our friends and family. But before I could voice my outrage, Mark spoke up. Maybe they should just leave the presents unopened, right? He said, his voice mild. Exactly. I chimed in, relieved he wasn't completely oblivious. Martha scoffed. Don't be silly, honey. It's rude not to open presents. Besides, she added, her eyes gleaming, we might find something truly special in here. Special for them, that much was clear. I watched in growing frustration as they picked through the gifts, setting aside anything that caught their fancy, a silver picture frame, a set of engraved wine glasses, a fancy cheese board. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. These are our wedding gifts, I said, my voice firm. Not yours to take. Look, honey, Martha said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. We just saw some things that would look lovely in our new house. You know, the one we're redecorating? They were redecorating? With our wedding gifts? The anger bubbled up inside me, threatening to spill over. What about the gift you got us? I asked, my voice tight. Martha paused, her hand hovering over a box wrapped in fancy floral paper. She rummaged through the pile, finally pulling out a small, oddly shaped package. With a flourish, she handed it to me. I unwrapped it slowly, my heart sinking with each layer of tissue paper. Inside was a cheap glass statuette, the kind you'd find at a discount store, adorned with garish plastic flowers. My stomach churned. This was their idea of a wedding gift? Maybe Grandma was right. Maybe I'd married into a nightmare. The wedding gift incident was just the tip of the iceberg. Martha's shopping sprees became a regular occurrence. She'd call, all chipper, and ask me to join her for a girls' day out. What it actually meant was me being her unpaid personal shopper. We'd browse stores, and inevitably, Martha would find something absolutely must-have. Then, at checkout, she'd do this weird shuffle with her purchases and mine, muttering about forgetting her wallet and such a hassle with separate bags. Of course, by the time the cashier figured it all out, I'd be stuck paying for both our stuff. Arthur wasn't much better. Weekends were his prime visiting time. He'd waltz in unannounced, plop himself down on the couch, and proceed to spend the entire day glued to the TV, inhaling whatever snacks I had on hand. When I finally built up the courage to ask him why he spent so much time at our place, he looked at me with a straight face and said, "Saves money on groceries and electricity, doesn't it?" The audacity of the man. Did he think we were running a charity? Mark, ever the peacekeeper, just rolled his eyes and muttered something about Dad just needing some company. The birthday dinner was the final straw. I decided to treat myself, a nice night out at a fancy restaurant to celebrate another year older, and hopefully wiser. Naturally, I invited Martha and Arthur. Big mistake. The menu was a confusing array of French names and unfamiliar ingredients. Undeterred, Martha and Arthur ordered the most expensive dishes, pronouncing them with a confidence that belied their complete lack of knowledge. Halfway through the meal, Martha declared the escargots too slimy and pushed the plate away. Arthur choked on a mouthful of bouillabaisse, spraying a gout of saffron broth across the table. The entire evening was a disaster. By the time the bill arrived, my blood pressure was through the roof. The cost of that meal could have fed us for a month. And guess who offered to chip in? Nope, not Mark. He just sat there, oblivious, while I choked out a strained thank you to the waiter and reached for my credit card. Back home, fuming and frustrated, I finally confronted Mark. "How can you just let your parents walk all over you like that?" I demanded. "Come on, babe," he said, dismissive. "It's not a big deal. They're just, like that. Like what? Selfish and entitled? Mark, this isn't okay. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I love you, but you gotta pick your battles. My parents are, well, my parents. They're not gonna change. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been naive, hoping to change them, to somehow mold them into the in-laws I'd always dreamed of. But the reality was staring me in the face. Martha and Arthur were who they were, and that wasn't going to change. The birthday dinner debacle was a turning point, but not the end. The in-law gift-giving strategy became painfully clear: shower us with cheap, impersonal trinkets on holidays and expect extravagant presents in return. A framed picture of a lighthouse for Christmas? Try a top-of-the-line espresso machine for Mother's Day, according to Martha's order. Any hint at the unbalanced value of gifts resulted in a lecture about family and not keeping score. My grandma, bless her soul, wouldn't dream of asking for anything. Every time I'd inquire about a holiday gift, she'd brush it off with "Honey, I have everything I need. Just come visit, that's all that matters." Meanwhile, Martha and Arthur treated gift-giving like a competitive sport. They'd show up unannounced, a triumphant glint in their eyes, brandishing their latest treasures. A chipped ceramic fruit bowl for Christmas? A set of mismatched oven mitts decorated with faded cartoon cats for Valentine's Day? Each offering felt like a slap in the face. The final insult came on Thanksgiving. This year, I'd opted for a quiet night in, just Mark and me, maybe order some takeout and watch a movie. But of course, Martha and Arthur had other plans. They barged in, laden with shopping bags, their faces plastered with self-satisfied grins. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetie," Martha trilled, thrusting a brightly wrapped package at me. I unwrapped it with a sinking feeling. Inside was a gaudy scarf, the kind you might find at a gas station gift shop. Flowers were fake plastic, the fabric felt like sandpaper against my skin. "It's perfect, isn't it?" Martha beamed. "Matches your new coat perfectly." I forced a smile. The coat in question was a vintage find I'd scored at a thrift store. The scarf, well, it clashed spectacularly. "Thanks, Martha," I mumbled, trying to hide my disappointment. Arthur, meanwhile, was holding up a small box. "And for you, son," he declared, "a little something to help you unwind after a long day at work." Mark's eyes lit up. He eagerly tore into the box, revealing a pack of cheap drugstore cigars. The kind that smelled like dirty ashtrays and regret. "Thanks, Dad," he said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. That was it. The final straw. Here I was, staring at a birthday gift that insulted my taste and a husband who seemed more excited about a pack of drugstore cigars than his wife's well-being. The anger simmered inside me, threatening to boil over. But instead of exploding, I did something completely unexpected. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and thanked them for the lovely gifts. A glimmer of hope arrived in the form of my work performance. I landed a coveted quarterly award, a hefty bonus that practically screamed, "Celebrate." Venice, with its romantic canals and rich history, had always been a dream destination. Knowing I spoke fluent Italian sealed the deal. This trip, I decided, would be a chance to reconnect with Mark, to escape the suffocating grip of his parents for a while. Except news travels fast, especially bad news to eager ears. Martha and Arthur, upon learning of our travel plans, descended like hungry vultures. "Venice, huh?" Martha cooed, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing avarice. "Sounds delightful. Always wanted to see those gondolas up close." "Actually," I said, trying to be polite, "this trip is just for Mark and me. A little romantic getaway." Arthur scoffed. "Come on, Amelia, don't be selfish. We've never been to Europe, let alone Venice. Think of the pictures." Pictures? This wasn't about a photo op with gondolas, it was about escaping their smothering presence. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm, "but this is a trip for two." My polite refusal triggered a meltdown of epic proportions. They called me selfish, greedy, accused me of trying to alienate Mark from his family. The worst part? Mark, ever the peacekeeper, didn't stand up for me. Instead, he mumbled something about maybe they could come along and it wouldn't be that bad. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about a trip anymore. This was about boundaries, about respect, about whether our marriage could survive his parents' constant intrusion. I looked at Mark, my voice laced with ice. Absolutely not. This is our trip, and they are not invited. The fight that followed was brutal. Harsh words were exchanged, accusations hurled. By the end of it, a heavy silence had settled between us. We retreated to opposite ends of the apartment, a cold war brewing in our once happy home. Days blurred into one another, the silence in the apartment a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened between Mark and me. I didn't call his parents, the mere thought of their entitled whining made my stomach churn. Mark remained in his self-imposed exile, the only communication a terse, "good morning," mumbled in the kitchen each day. Then, on a random Saturday morning, I woke up to an empty apartment and a sinking feeling in my gut. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the notification sound grating on my nerves. Glancing at it, my blood ran cold. Airline ticket confirmations. 3 of them. To Venice. Purchased from my account. Panic clawed at my throat. No. It couldn't be. But as I scrolled through the confirmations, the sickening truth settled in. Mark, with the audacity of a seasoned thief, had used my trusted access to our bank account to book not only his own ticket to Venice, but 2 more, for his precious parents. Hotel reservations, also courtesy of my hard-earned money, confirmed my suspicions. He'd gone behind my back, completely disregarded my feelings, and booked a vacation for himself and his leech-like family with my money. The anger, hot and furious, burned away the remnants of any affection I might have had left for him. My fingers flew across the screen, canceling the return flights and hotel rooms. Next, with a steely resolve, I revoked Mark's access to my bank account. One small act of defiance in the face of their colossal selfishness. A few hours later, my phone erupted with a call. Mark's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail notification arrived a moment later, his voice laced with a mixture of panic and fury. "Amelia, where the hell are you? We're supposed to be checking into the hotel. What did you do with the tickets?" I deleted the message without listening. Then came a barrage of texts, from both Mark and Martha. A mixture of demands, accusations, and veiled threats. Mark's final message, though, sent a dark chuckle rippling through me. "If you don't give me back access to the account and get us on that damn plane, Amelia, we're done. Consider this your divorce notice." With a newfound clarity, I started making my own plans. I contacted a lawyer, the weight lifting from my shoulders with each step towards independence. Mark's divorce notice might as well have been a gift. I didn't wait for Mark to waltz back in, tail between his legs. Packing was cathartic. Clothes went into suitcases, knickknacks into boxes. But the gifts from Martha and Arthur, those gaudy trinkets and mismatched sets, I left untouched. I lined them up on the living room floor, a garish monument to their selfishness. A final act of defiance before I slammed the door shut on that chapter of my life. Grandma's house, with its familiar scent of cinnamon rolls and worn furniture, felt like a warm hug. Tears streamed down my face as I recounted the entire ordeal, the hurt and anger spilling out like a dam breaking. Grandma listened patiently, a sad smile on her lips. "I told you, honey," she said softly, her voice laced with a hint of "I told you so," but mostly concern. "But sometimes you gotta learn things the hard way." "You know," I said, a newfound determination settling in my voice. "Maybe this is a good thing. Now I know what to look for, what to avoid." A few days later, a knock on the door shattered the peaceful afternoon. My heart lurched, but before I could react, Grandma ushered me towards the back room. Peeking through the curtain, I saw Mark standing there, looking lost and dejected. "Amelia, please," he pleaded, his voice thick with desperation. "Let me explain. Grandma opened the door a crack, her expression unreadable. Mark launched into a groveling apology, spewing words about realizing his mistakes and trying to distance himself from his parents. The anger that had been simmering inside me bubbled over. I barged into the hallway, a cold fury in my eyes. Distance himself? I scoffed. Mark, you were about to spend my money taking them on a vacation. This isn't about you suddenly seeing the light. This is about you being comfortable. Comfortable because I paid the bills and bought your parents presents. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off. No, Mark. This is over. I don't want to build a life with someone who prioritizes comfort over respect, or someone who lets his parents walk all over him and his wife. I deserve better than that. Mark's face crumpled, but this time I felt no pity. The door shut with a finality that echoed in the silence that followed. Maybe Grandma was right. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, something better. A life free of entitled in-laws, a life filled with respect, and maybe, someday, with love that wasn't selfish or convenient. I never believed in fate, not until the day I bumped into Alex at the department store. It was one of those busy sale days, the kind where you find yourself elbow to elbow with strangers, all hunting for a bargain. That's where our story began, amidst the chaos and the discount signs. I'm Sarah, by the way, a librarian with a love for quiet spaces and the rustle of pages. My life was simple, routine, and I liked it that way. Then, Alex stormed in, like a character out of one of those romance novels I secretly enjoyed during my lunch breaks. He was a sales manager, a man who thrived in the hustle and the bustle, a stark contrast to my own world. Hey, watch it! I snapped as someone's hand brushed against mine, reaching for the last lamp on sale. I looked up, ready to unleash my frustration on the intruder, but my words faltered. There he was, Alex, with a grin that could light up the dim aisle we stood in. Sorry about that, he chuckled, his hand still on the lamp I had my eyes on. But I saw it first. I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Dream on. I've had my eye on this since I stepped into this aisle. The banter could have ended there, with one of us walking away in defeat. But Alex, with his easy charm, suggested, how about we grab a coffee instead? My treat. You can tell me all about the other bargains you've snatched today. I was taken aback. Men like him didn't usually notice women like me, women who preferred the background, the sidelines. Yet, there was a sincerity in his eyes that caught me off guard. Against my better judgment, I found myself nodding, a small smile creeping up on my face. The coffee shop was crowded, but Alex found us a quiet corner. As we sat, sipping on our drinks, the conversation flowed effortlessly. He talked about his job, how he loved the challenge, the thrill of closing a deal. I shared my passion for books, how each page whisked me away to a different world. You're interesting, Sarah, he said, his gaze intense. Most people I meet are all about the surface stuff. But you've got depth. I could feel my cheeks heating up at his words. No one had ever described me like that before. And you're not what I expected, I admitted. I thought sales managers were all about the hard sell, the smooth talk. Alex laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the space between us. Guilty as charged. But there's more to me than just the job, you know. We talked until the coffee shop began to close, neither of us wanting the night to end. It was then that Alex asked for my number, his phone already in hand. I'd like to do this again, Sarah. Without the argument over a lamp. I hesitated, a part of me wary of stepping into unknown territory. Yet, as I looked into his eyes, I saw a glimpse of something more, a connection I couldn't quite explain. So, I gave him my number, setting the stage for what would become the most tumultuous chapter of my life. Our chats turned into dates into a relationship, and before I knew it, Alex and I were standing at the altar, promising each other forever. We moved into his house, a cozy little place that soon felt like home. Our dreams of starting a family, however, proved to be a challenge, testing our bond in ways I never imagined. Life has a way of flipping the script on you, doesn't it? For years, Alex and I chased the dream of having a kid, running the gamut of tests only to be told by doctors to keep the faith. We did, until we didn't. Somewhere down the line, hope turned into acceptance that it would just be the two of us. Only, that acceptance brewed a distance between Alex and me, a gap that widened with every late night he spent at work or with his buddies while I was left to stare at the empty rooms of our home. I really tried to bridge that gap. "Alex, maybe we should see someone, a professional to talk about this," I suggested one evening, mustering all the courage I had. He looked at me like I'd suggested selling the house to join the circus. "A shrink? For what? So they can tell us how to talk to each other? No way, Sarah." And just like that, the conversation was over before it even began. But life, unpredictable as ever, had another curveball in store. Feeling off one day led me to the hospital, tests, and then the shocker of a lifetime: I was pregnant. The joy of it overwhelmed me, a joy I couldn't wait to share with Alex. His reaction, though, was as cold as ice. "Pregnant? Sarah, you know how old you are, right? You're an old 39-year-old woman with your sores and problems. This is risky, dangerous even. Maybe we should think about not going through with it." His words hit me like a slap. Not go through with it? "Alex, this is our baby, our miracle." But the Alex standing in front of me wasn't the man I married. This version was distant, cold, and calculated. A miracle? Or a mistake? Think about it, Sarah. Pregnancy was anything but easy. My body felt like it was on a roller coaster, and my heart? Well, it was breaking. Alex's visits were few and far between, each one more awkward and strained than the last. Coming home from the hospital only meant returning to a house that felt less and less like a home. "You're not even working, Sarah." "I'm out here, busting my ass, and for what? So you can play house?" Alex threw those words at me one night, his frustration boiling over. I bit back the hurt, the anger. "Playing house? Is that what you think I'm doing?" "I'm carrying our child, Alex. Our child." But it was like talking to a wall. A wall that was packing its bags and moving farther away from me with each passing day. Our conversations dwindled to nothing, our interactions mere ghostly encounters. The man I once thought I'd grow old with had become a stranger, passing through the life of me and our soon-to-be child like a ship in the night. When I thought I'd faced the toughest battles, life proved me wrong. Giving birth to Daniel was both a miracle and a storm's beginning. Barely catching my breath from labor, the doctors hit me with news that felt like a punch to the gut. Daniel was sick, they said, he will be disabled, and everything that an ordinary child can do will become inaccessible to him. Hearing that, I felt my world tilt. It was one of those moments where everything slows down, and all you can hear is your heartbeat loud in your ears. But I had to be strong, for Daniel. I was reeling, trying to wrap my head around this new reality, when Alex walked into the hospital room. His face was stone, eyes cold, a harbinger of the storm to come. "Sarah, what's this I hear about Daniel being sick?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the sterile air of the hospital room. I swallowed, trying to find the words. "The doctors, they said he has a serious condition. But we can." "Serious condition?" Alex interrupted, his voice rising. "He is an invalid, a worthless person." "And whose fault is that, huh? You had to push for this, didn't you? At your age?" His words shocked me. "A worthless person?" "Alex, how can you say that? We wanted him, we tried for him." "Wanted?" He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "I wanted a healthy child, Sarah. Not a lifetime burden. Do you have any idea how much this is going to cost us? How much he's going to need?" I felt my heart break, piece by piece. "He's your son, Alex. Our son. How can you talk like this?" Alex paced, a caged animal looking for an escape. "No, Sarah. I can't do this. I won't. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air, heavy and final. A divorce? I echoed, disbelief and pain mingling in my voice. Yes. And I want it clean and quick. I'll take the house, you take the kid. That's it. I was speechless, watching the man I thought I knew transform into a stranger. And what about Daniel? My voice was barely a whisper. I want nothing to do with him. You'll have to sign papers saying I gave up all rights. That's my condition. The absurdity of the situation hit me then. This was no longer the man I married, this was someone else entirely. I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because I knew Daniel and I were better off without him. Leaving the house we shared, the life we built, felt like tearing away a part of myself. But as I held Daniel close, I knew it was the start of something new, something ours. Then, the final blow came. Friends told me Alex had moved someone and almost immediately after I left, a young, pregnant woman. The pieces fell into place, the late nights, the detachment. He'd been living a double life, and now he was starting a new chapter, without a backward glance. Starting over was no walk in the park. With Daniel in my arms and my life in shambles, I found myself on the doorstep of a new beginning. The house we moved into was modest, nothing like the one I'd left behind, but it was ours, and that made it perfect. I was ready to devote my whole life to my special baby. But the day the doctor told me there had been a mistake with Daniel's diagnosis was the day my world shifted on its axis. For years, I'd braced for a life of challenges, of endless doctor visits and sleepless nights. Then, suddenly, we were handed a clean slate. I'm terribly sorry for the error. Your son is perfectly healthy, he'd said, looking both relieved and embarrassed. I could have been angry, but all I felt was an overwhelming rush of gratitude. Daniel was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. I threw myself into motherhood with a vigor I didn't know I had. Those early years were a blur of milestones, of first words, first steps, and countless firsts that filled our days with joy and our hearts with love. My grandmother's inheritance was a blessing, a safety net that allowed me to focus on Daniel, without the weight of financial worries. When the time came, selling her house felt like closing one chapter and opening another, right here in our new home, where every corner whispered of new beginnings. Returning to work wasn't just a financial decision, it was about reclaiming a piece of myself that had been on pause. The library, with its familiar smell of books and the quiet hum of day-to-day business, welcomed me back like an old friend. Back to the grind, huh? Jake, my colleague, had said with a grin on my first day back. He'd been manning the fort while I was away, and his casual chaos was a stark contrast to my need for order. Yeah, someone's gotta keep you in line, I shot back, slipping into the easy banter that had always made our workspace lively. Adjusting to the rhythm of working life, of juggling schedules and snatching moments with Daniel between shifts, was a challenge, but one I embraced wholeheartedly. Daniel, for his part, thrived in school, his curiosity boundless, his energy infectious. Mom, did you know sharks never run out of teeth? If they lose one, another grows back, he'd say, bursting through the door with facts and stories that turned our dinner times into adventures. Our life, once shadowed by fear and uncertainty, was now lit by the steady glow of routine and the unexpected joys of daily discoveries. The library, once a quiet sanctuary, became a place of lively learning, not just for me, but for Daniel too, who saw it as a treasure trove of knowledge. Mom, when I grow up, I'm gonna read every book in here, Daniel declared one afternoon as he helped me reshelve books, his small hands struggling with the weight of a particularly thick volume on dinosaurs. I laughed, ruffling his hair. That's quite the goal, champ. But if anyone can do it, it's you. The Christmas party at Daniel's school was something straight out of a holiday card, twinkling lights, children's laughter echoing off the walls, and the air filled with the scent of pine and gingerbread. I was there, mingling with other parents, sipping on too sweet punch, and keeping an eye out for Daniel, who was a blur of energy and excitement among his peers. Suddenly, Daniel appeared by my side, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Mom, you've got to meet Tommy, my best friend. His excitement was infectious, and I let him tug me through the crowd towards a boy who was looking equally eager. As we approached Tommy and his parents, my heart skipped a beat, then sank like a stone. There stood Alex, my ex-husband, with that woman, his new wife, the one he had left us for. The shock on his face mirrored mine, but any semblance of a civil reunion evaporated with his next actions. Alex's protective hand clamped down on Tommy's shoulder, pulling him back as if drawing a line in the sand. "Tommy, stay away from him," he barked, nodding towards Daniel with undisguised contempt. "I don't want you mixing with that boy. He's not right." The words were a slap, a brutal reminder of the man Alex had become. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice sharp with disbelief and rising anger. "What did you just say about our son?" Alex, unfazed, met my gaze with that cold, arrogant look I remembered all too well. "You heard me. I'm not having my son play with someone defective." The ugliness of his words stung, but I squared my shoulders, refusing to let him see how deeply they cut. "Defective? Daniel is perfectly healthy, Alex. Not that you'd care enough to know." His smirk was infuriating, a clear indication he believed he had the upper hand. "Oh, I know you'd like to think everything's fine. But let's not pretend you didn't mess him up with your choices." Before I could retort, his wife, a bystander until now, chimed in, her voice laced with concern. "Let's not make a scene, darling. We're at a school event, remember?" Alex shrugged, his gaze still locked with mine. "She needs to hear the truth. Besides, we're doing much better now. My wife is rich, and her father owns the company I work for." He draped an arm around her, a show of possession more than affection. I looked at her, this woman who had unknowingly dismantled my life, and then back at Alex. "Doing better? By teaching your son to judge and look down on others? By spreading lies?" Alex laughed, a sound void of any warmth. "Oh, Sarah, always so dramatic. We've moved on to bigger and better things. Something you wouldn't understand." His words were meant to sting, to show off his supposedly better life. But looking at him, all I felt was pity. Money doesn't buy decency, Alex. Or kindness. As they walked away, Daniel looked up at me, his young face etched with questions and hurt. "Mom, why did he say those things? Why doesn't he want Tommy to be my friend?" I knelt down, taking Daniel's hands in mine, searching for the right words. Sometimes, people say unkind things because they don't understand, or they're dealing with their own issues. It's not a reflection of you, my love. You are perfect just the way you are. Daniel nodded, though I could see he was still processing the harsh exchange. "Are we still going to have fun tonight?" he asked, his voice small. I smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "Of course, we are. Nothing and no one is going to ruin our night. Let's go enjoy the party, okay?" After the Christmas party debacle, I tried to push Alex and his hurtful words to the back of my mind. Life with Daniel was full enough, without dwelling on past pains. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done with us just yet. A few days after the party, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. "Hello? Hi, is this Sarah?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, unsure. "Yes, speaking. Who's this?" It's Julie. Alex's wife." Her voice wavered, like she was bracing for an onslaught. I paused, taken aback. "Julie? What can I do for you?" There was a heavy sigh. I wanted to talk to you about what happened at the Christmas party. And, about Alex." I tensed, memories of Alex's words still fresh. "All right. What about him?" Julie was silent for a moment before continuing. "I heard what he said to Daniel. And to you. I didn't know about any of this. About how he left you, about Daniel. He told me a different story." Her admission sparked a mix of emotions in me, but I kept my voice even. "And what story did he tell you?" "That you two grew apart. That the divorce was mutual. He never mentioned He never said anything about Daniel being sick or... Julie trailed off, but her meaning hung heavy between us. I sighed, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy for her. Julie, Alex has a way of twisting the truth to fit his narrative. What happened at the party, what he said. That's the real Alex. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She was quiet for a moment. I want to apologize, Sarah. For him. For what he said. It was unforgivable. And I'm going to confront him. He needs to take responsibility. We said our goodbyes, a mutual understanding hanging between us. After we hung up, I sat, phone in hand, pondering the strange turn of events. Alex's lies unraveling at the seams, and Julie, caught in the crossfire, seeking truth. 2 weeks later, after Julie's unexpected call, my phone rang, slicing through the quiet of the evening. The screen flashed his name, a reminder of a chapter one thought I had closed for good. With a sigh, I answered, bracing myself for whatever came next. Sarah, you've ruined everything. Alex's voice was sharp, tinged with desperation and anger. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath before responding. Ruin everything? Alex, whatever's happening is on you, not me. He was practically seething on the other end. Julie's leaving me. She found out about how I treated you, and then she got detectives on me. Found out I messed up again. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. So, let me get this straight. Julie left you because you're the same lying cheat you've always been, and somehow this is my fault? It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't talked to her, he accused, his logic as flawed as ever. Alex, I didn't tell Julie to hire detectives. And I didn't make you cheat. You did that all on your own, I said, my voice firm, devoid of any sympathy I might have once had for him. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was laced with a desperation I hadn't heard before. I've lost everything, Sarah. Julie's dad fired me from the company. She's taking the house, the cars, everything. I have nothing. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see. And you think this is my problem because we were married once. We have Daniel. And I know I've been terrible, but I've changed, Sarah. I've realized everything now. Please, can we try again? For Daniel? The audacity of his request left me speechless for a moment. Alex, you haven't changed. You're only sorry because you got caught and lost everything. And even suggesting we try again? That ship didn't just sail, it sank. Daniel and we're doing fine. Better than fine, actually. And we don't need someone who only comes around when they've hit rock bottom. But I have nowhere else to go, he pleaded, his voice breaking. That's not my problem, Alex. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. Alone, I said, my tone final. He tried to argue, to bargain, but I cut him off. No, Alex. This is where it ends. You need to figure out your own life, without dragging us down with you. Goodbye. I hung up before he could say another word, the finality of the gesture making my heart race. It was done. I turned off my phone, not wanting any more disruptions for the evening. A couple of months after the whole debacle with Alex, I got a call out of the blue from Julie, his now ex-wife. She wanted to meet up, kids in tow, for a coffee chat. Curiosity piqued and a bit wary, I agreed. Daniel was always asking about Tommy, so I thought, why not? We met at a cozy little cafe downtown, a neutral ground of sorts. Julie was there with Tommy, both looking a bit apprehensive but hopeful. Daniel lit up at the sight of his half-brother, and within minutes, the kids were chattering away like old times, the awkwardness melting away under their shared excitement. Julie and I found a quiet table, coffee in hand, a world apart from the chaos of our children's laughter. So, I heard you finally went through with the divorce, I ventured, trying to tread lightly. She nodded, a mix of relief and resignation in her eyes. Yeah, I did. It was messy. But I'm out on the other side now. Feels like I can finally breathe again. I could relate, remembering my own tangled exit from Alex's life. I'm glad for you, Julie. It's not easy, walking away, but sometimes it's the only way forward. Julie sipped her coffee, then looked at me, a determination in her gaze. He showed his true colors, through and through. Made the divorce hell. But I'm glad it's over. And I've been thinking, our boys, they're half-brothers. Despite Alex being, well, Alex, I don't want Tommy growing up without knowing Daniel. Her suggestion took me by surprise, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I'd like that, I admitted. Daniel's always asking about Tommy. They're good for each other, it seems. Watching our sons play, I couldn't help but marvel at how life had turned out. A few years ago, I never would have imagined sitting here, chatting with you, watching our kids play together, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. Julie chuckled, a sound of genuine amusement. Life's funny that way, isn't it? Throws you curves, and you end up finding family in the most unexpected places. Our conversation flowed easily after that, the initial awkwardness giving way to a shared understanding. We talked about the kids, about moving forward, about building a life after Alex. It was cathartic, in a way I hadn't anticipated. Driving home, Daniel buzzing with stories about his afternoon with Tommy, I realized that this was what moving forward looked like. It wasn't just about leaving the past behind, it was about building something new, something better, from the pieces. You know how they say life can flip on a dime? That's exactly what happened to me at this party. My friend Jess had been nagging me for weeks to come out and meet her bunch of incredible friends. Honestly, I was more into a quiet night with my reports and market analysis, but Jess wouldn't have any of it. Sarah, you need to get out more. Come on, it'll be fun, she insisted. So, there I was, in my least uncomfortable party dress, nursing a glass of wine and sticking out like a sore thumb among strangers. The place was buzzing, people laughing and chatting away. I stuck close to Jess, who seemed to know everyone. She was in the middle of introducing me to a couple of her friends when he walked in. Tom. Jess's face lit up. Oh, you gotta meet Tom, she said, dragging me through the crowd. Tom was this average-looking guy, nothing like the flashy type she'd expect at these gatherings. He had a sad smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jess introduced us, and for some reason, we clicked. Maybe it was the way he talked about his daughter, Lily, with such warmth and pride. Or maybe it was his candidness about being a widower and raising her alone. Whatever it was, it got me. We found ourselves away from the crowd, sitting on some ridiculously oversized cushions. So, Sarah, Jess tells me you're into stocks and all that Wall Street stuff. Tom started, his voice rough but friendly. Yeah, something like that. I analyze investment opportunities, help people grow their money. Sounds boring, I know, I replied, trying to make my job sound less nerdy than it was. Nah, that sounds pretty damn impressive. Wish I knew a thing or two about handling money like that, he chuckled, taking a sip of his beer. We talked about everything and nothing, movies, books, the nightmare of dating. I found myself laughing more than I had in months. Tom had this easy way about him, making you feel like you'd known him forever. You know, I didn't want to come tonight. Socializing isn't exactly my strong suit, I confessed, feeling unusually open. Tell me about it. I only came because Jess promised Lily could tag along for a bit. Wanted her to meet some normal adults, whatever that means, Tom said, rolling his eyes. The conversation shifted to Lily, and I could see the light in Tom's eyes when he talked about her. She's something else, my Lily. Smart, kind, a bit too cheeky for her own good, he said, a proud smile spreading across his face. I was intrigued. She sounds wonderful. Raising a kid on your own, that's got to be tough. Tom shrugged, his expression turning serious. It's not easy, but Lily makes it all worth it. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. As the party wound down, I realized I didn't want this conversation to end. Tom felt like a breath of fresh air in my calculated, routine life. Hey, maybe we could grab a coffee sometime? Talk more about market trends, or whatever? I found myself saying, surprising even myself. Tom's smile was the answer I hoped for. I'd like that. It's been a long time since I had a reason to look forward to something. Very soon I met Tom's daughter, and she was like a breath of fresh air. We quickly became friends, which made her father very happy. That's how a simple meeting turned into a real love affair. After Tom and I decided to tie the knot, it was clear we wanted something simple, no fancy dresses or grand churches. Just us, my folks, and Lily, who was more excited than anyone. The day was plain but perfect, filled with genuine smiles and a few happy tears. Moving into Tom's house afterwards, I was buzzing with ideas to make the place feel more like ours, not just his. My new life meant working from home, which my boss was surprisingly cool about. It gave me the chance to really bond with Lily. I'd pick her up from school, and we'd chat about everything under the sun on our way to her ballet classes. She started calling me Mom, which warmed my heart every single time. Creating a cozy home for us became my new project, filling it with love and laughter. But, as the months rolled by, things with Tom started shifting, so subtly at first. He'd make offhand comments about dinner being too bland or too salty. "Sarah, what's this supposed to be?" Tom would ask, poking at a casserole I'd spent hours on. "Supposed to be your dinner, but if you're gonna act all Gordon Ramsay about it, maybe you should cook tomorrow," I'd retort, trying to keep the mood light. He didn't. Instead, the critiques piled up. My appearance became his next target. "Babe, when did you last hit the gym? You're looking different," Tom dropped casually one evening, his eyes skimming over me like I was a fixer-upper. "Guess I've been too busy being a stepmom and working from home." "But thanks for the heads up," I snapped back, the sting of his words hitting harder than expected. Lily, bless her, was my silver lining. She and I grew closer, our bond unaffected by the growing tension between her dad and me. "Mom, can you help me with my homework?" Lily would ask, her bright eyes always looking up to me for guidance. "Of course, sweetie. Let's tackle it together," I'd reply, grateful for her presence and the normalcy it brought. Even as Tom and I drifted apart, Lily and I stuck together like glue. I found solace in our little talks and her ballet recitals. Yet, despite my efforts to keep our home a haven, Tom's dissatisfaction seemed to seep into every corner. "You know, Sarah, maybe you should try one of those online cooking classes. Spice things up a bit," Tom suggested one night, his tone laced with an undercurrent of displeasure. "Or maybe we could try eating out more. Give your taste buds a break from my terrible cooking," I'd counter, half joking but deeply wounded. Life at home started feeling less like a family and more like walking on eggshells. Tom's attitude took a nosedive, and it wasn't just about small things anymore. He set these crazy rules like expecting a brand new dish for dinner every single day. It was as if he thought I was some kind of gourmet chef instead of his partner. One evening, I was in the kitchen, trying to whip up something new to keep him happy. I was juggling work emails on my phone, stirring a pot, and mentally planning my next day. Tom walked in, a scowl already forming on his face. "What's for dinner?" he asked, his tone sharp. "I'm trying something new, a recipe I found online. Thought we could use a little variety," I said, trying to sound upbeat. He just humphed, peering over my shoulder. "Doesn't look very appetizing. You know, when you decided to work from home, I thought you'd at least manage to keep the house in order and cook decent meals." His words stung. "Tom, you know I'm working too, right? It's not like I'm sitting around all day. Plus, I pick up Lily, help her with homework, visit my parents." He cut me off. Yeah, always the same excuse. "You're at home, aren't you? Shouldn't be too hard to keep things tidy and cook properly." I bit my tongue, holding back the tears. It was becoming a nightly ritual, this dance of disappointment and criticism. One night, as we settled on the couch to watch TV, he started on about my appearance. Pointing at the women on the screen, he said, "Look at them, they're about your age, right? Why do they look so much younger and better?" I tried to keep my voice level. "Tom, those women have all day to focus on looking good. They likely have personal trainers, chefs, and who knows what cosmetic work done." But he wouldn't have it. "Excuses, Sarah. It's all about priorities. You used to care about how you looked." I felt deflated, worn out. It wasn't just about the cooking or the cleaning anymore, it was a constant comparison, a reminder that I wasn't enough. During these times, Lily was my only solace. Now a teenager, she saw through her dad's behavior. "Mom, you don't deserve this. Why do you put up with it? You should just leave him," she'd say, her words filled with worry and anger. But I couldn't bring myself to believe that the Tom I fell in love with was completely gone. "He's under a lot of stress, Lily. I believe he still loves us. He'll change," I'd respond, more to convince myself than her. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. 15 years of ups and downs, but mostly, it feels like I've been riding a slow descent into a place I never thought I'd find myself. Now, at 55, with my stepdaughter Lily living her own life, though we talk every day, sharing secrets and stories like we used to, life threw me another curveball. Cancer. The word hit me like a freight train, but somehow, I managed to keep my composure long enough to tell Tom. His reaction? Well, it was something. Not anger, not sadness, just disappointment. Not because of the diagnosis, but because I wouldn't be around to cook his meals or clean the house like I used to. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Look after myself," he had said, his voice laced with irritation rather than concern. I was stunned, not sure how to respond to such blatant selfishness. It's not like I expected a dramatic outpouring of love and support, but a little empathy wouldn't have hurt. His lack of concern cut deeper than any diagnosis could. So, I started treatment, spending more time in the hospital than at home. My parents, bless their hearts, visited whenever they could, despite their own health issues. Lily, too, was a constant presence, her calls and visits a bright spot in those dreary hospital days. Tom? He never showed. Not once. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Even after everything, part of me hoped he'd come around, show that he cared, even just a little. During one of Lily's visits, I couldn't hide my disappointment any longer. "I can't believe he hasn't shown up. Not even once," I confided, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Lily, ever the straight shooter, didn't mince her words. "Mom, you deserve so much better. I've been saying it for years. It's like he doesn't even see you. You're fighting this battle, and where is he? Nowhere. You need to think about what's best for you now." I knew she was right, but it's not easy to let go of 15 years, even if they weren't all good. Deep down, I still harbored that small flicker of hope that things could get better, that Tom would change. But lying in that hospital bed, facing my own mortality, I started to see things more clearly. Maybe it was time to start thinking about what I needed, not just what Tom wanted. The revelation came on a Tuesday, just another ordinary day until Lily walked into my hospital room with a look that spelled trouble. I could tell something was up the moment I saw her. Lily never was good at hiding her feelings. "Mom, we need to talk," she started, avoiding my gaze. That's when my stomach tied itself into knots. Lily calling me Mom was always a balm to my soul, but today, it felt like the prelude to bad news. "What's wrong, Lily?" I asked, bracing myself. "It's about Dad." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "He's seeing someone else, Mom. And it's serious. He introduced her to me last week." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not that our marriage was perfect, but to hear he'd moved on so blatantly was a different kind of hurt. "How long?" was all I managed to muster, my voice barely above a whisper. "A while, I guess. I'm so sorry, Mom. I thought you should know." Lily's voice cracked, her usual toughness giving way to concern. I sat there, trying to process the news. Betrayed, yes, but surprised? Not entirely. Tom hadn't been a husband to me in a long time. Still, the confirmation of his infidelity stung. The shock of it hit me hard, though a part of me wasn't surprised. Tom's late nights, the sudden interest in looking younger, the new cologne, it all made sense now. Yet, hearing it out loud from Lily felt like a betrayal of a whole different kind. Does he think this is okay? Introducing her to you like it's all normal? I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. Lily shrugged. He's convinced himself you're already gone, Mom. Says it's time he moved on for his happiness. It's like he doesn't even care about how this would hurt you. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. His happiness, huh? What about all those years I spent trying to make him happy? What a joke. And that's when it hit me, Tom had never really seen me. Not the real me. He saw a caretaker, a cook, a cleaner, but never his wife. And here I was, battling cancer, while he played house with someone else. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something fierce within me. Anger, yes, but also determination. I'd been living for Tom, worrying about his meals, his house, his happiness. It was time to start living for myself. Lily wiped away a tear, looking determined all of a sudden. What are you gonna do? You can't let him just get away with this. A cold resolve settled over me. Tom's actions, his complete disregard for our marriage, it all clarified one thing. It was time to close this chapter for good. Tell him I agree to the divorce, I said firmly, surprising even myself with the decisiveness in my voice. It's clear he's moved on, and so should I. Lily's eyes widened. Really? Just like that? Yes, just like that. He thinks he can replace me so easily, let him try. But he'll regret this, Lily. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. He'll see what he's thrown away. Lily stood up, her stance shifting from worried to warrior-like. I'll tell him. And Mom, we'll get through this. Screw him and his midlife crisis fantasy. You're worth $1 million of her. Her fiery spirit in that moment gave me strength. I was about to embark on a tough journey, battling both cancer and a crumbling marriage, but I wasn't alone. I had Lily, and together, we were formidable. Thanks, Lily. We've got this, I said, a small smile breaking through the gloom. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would reclaim my life and my dignity, with my loyal stepdaughter by my side. 2 days had felt like an eternity, each moment dragging on as I lay in that hospital bed, my body fighting a battle I hadn't signed up for. Then Tom walked in, his presence as cold as the chill running down my spine. The smirk on his face was something out of a nightmare, but this was my reality. He looked me over, his eyes devoid of any warmth. Look at you, all sick and pitiful. Can't say I'm surprised. You've let yourself go, haven't you? Found myself someone much better. Younger, prettier, healthier. He gloated, his words dripping with disdain. His words cut deeper than any knife could, but I was done showing him my pain. He threw the divorce papers on my bed, a challenge in his eyes. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. I picked up the pen and signed, each stroke a silent vow to myself that this was the beginning of my liberation, not my defeat. You're just as weak-willed as ever. Pathetic, he sneered, a twisted satisfaction in his gaze. I met his stare, my voice steady. If that's what helps you sleep at night, Tom. The confusion flickered across his face, replaced quickly by his usual arrogance. He strutted out, leaving a trail of bitterness in his wake. As soon as the door clicked shut, I reached for my phone with a determination that surprised even me. I called Lily, my voice stronger than I felt. Lily, it's done. But I need you to do something for me, I said, pausing to make sure I had her full attention. Tell your dad about the $3 million I plan to leave you. It's important he knows. There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could almost see the gears turning in her head. Mom, are you sure? He's going to flip out. A small smile tugged at my lips. That's the point, darling. True to form, Tom's reaction was immediate and as predictable as ever. My phone became an incessant, vibrating companion, lighting up with his attempts to reach me. With each missed call, I felt an inch taller, a bit stronger. I watched the number climb, 50, 60, 70 missed calls, and with it, my resolve solidified. I couldn't help but laugh, a sound that felt foreign yet fitting for the moment. Here I was, supposedly at my weakest, yet I'd never felt more empowered. I had taken the first real step towards freeing myself from the chains of Tom's manipulation and cruelty. The sun was just peeking through the blinds when Tom burst into my hospital room the next morning, desperation etched in every line of his face. His sudden change of heart was as transparent as it was pathetic. "Sarah, I've been a fool. I see that now. I love you, and I'm ready to leave her and start over with you. We can remarry, start fresh," he pleaded, his hands outstretched as if he could physically pull me back into the life we once shared. I couldn't help but laugh, a deep, genuine sound that seemed to startle him. "Tom, you've shown me exactly who you are. After years of neglect, cruelty, and now this betrayal? And you think what? A few sweet words and it's all forgiven?" He blanched, taken aback by my reaction. "Sarah, please. I mean it. I realized I made a mistake." I shook my head, still incredulous. "A mistake? Tom, you deliberately chose to step out on our marriage, humiliated me while I was at my lowest. No, it's too late for regrets." His desperation turned to anger, his face reddening. "You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it. I'll sue you for every penny of that hidden money of yours." The threat was laughable. "Go ahead and try, Tom. That money? It's in my father's name. He made those investments, all legally binding and documented. You won't get a dime." The realization of his powerlessness hit him hard. His anger dissipated into sobs of frustration, a pitiful sight that had the guards rushing in. As they escorted him out, I moved to the window, watching him. There he was, the man I'd spent so many years with, looking so defeated and alone. Yet, I felt no pity. He was reaping what he'd sown, and in that moment, I knew I was finally free. "Justice prevails," I whispered to myself, a smile touching my lips. In that hospital room, I made a promise to myself. No longer would I be defined by the failings of my marriage or the cruelty of a man who couldn't appreciate the love and loyalty I'd offered. It was time to rebuild, to focus on my health, my happiness, and the future I deserved. The battle with cancer was like riding the world's most terrifying roller coaster, one where you can't see the track ahead. Months of treatment stretched out, with good days where hope flickered bright and bad days where it dimmed to nearly nothing. Remission would come, lifting me up, only for exacerbation to drag me back down into the fight. But I kept fighting, every single day, with every bit of strength I had, both for me and for Lily. Finally, the doctors gave me the news I'd been dreaming of. I was healthy, the cancer was gone. Walking out of that hospital felt surreal, like stepping into a new life waiting to be written. The fresh start wasn't just symbolic, it was real, tangible, and it was mine for the taking. Recovery wasn't just about the physical, it was mental, emotional, a total overhaul of life as I knew it. The day I was discharged from the hospital marked not just the end of my treatment, but the beginning of something new. Something mine. Lily picked me up, her car loaded with my few belongings. "Ready to start fresh, Mom?" she asked, her smile bright and encouraging. I couldn't help but return her smile. "More than ready, kiddo." We drove to my new place, a modest house I'd bought with the money I'd wisely invested over the years. It wasn't just a house, though, it was a promise of new beginnings, of freedom. As we unpacked, Lily chatted about decorating ideas, about painting the walls and planting a garden. "This is going to be a place of happiness, Mom. You'll see. We'll make it our sanctuary." Her enthusiasm was infectious. For the first time in years, I felt light, like a weight had been lifted. "I'd like that, Lily. A sanctuary sounds perfect." We took a break, sitting amidst boxes, with takeout containers between us. I've been thinking. I started. About what comes next. I want to use this chance not just to heal, but to rediscover who I am, who I want to be. Lily nodded, taking my hand. I've got your back, Mom. Always. And hey, you're already doing it. Look at how far you've come. She was right. The journey from being trapped in a loveless marriage to standing on my own 2 feet hadn't been easy. But here I was, ready to face the world on my terms. I'm thinking of starting a blog, I mused. Sharing my story, maybe help others who've been in similar situations. That's an amazing idea. Lily's eyes sparkled with pride. You've got so much wisdom to share. Plus, you're pretty badass, you know? I laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Thanks, Lily. I guess I am, aren't I? Said and done. I started my own personal blog, in which I shared the details of my struggle with cancer. People in the comments supported me, shared their own experiences. It was touching and reassuring at the same time. During one of our quiet evenings, Lily shared her own monumental decision. Mom, I've cut ties with Dad, she said, her voice steady, but I could see the turmoil in her eyes. After everything, I see you as my real mom. He chose his path, and I've chosen mine, with you. Hearing her call me mom in that context, knowing the weight it carried, filled me with an indescribable mix of pride and sorrow. Sorrow for the broken bridges in her life, but pride in her strength and in the bond we shared. Lily, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I started, taking her hands in mine. When the time comes, I'll be leaving everything to you, the house, the $3 million, all of it. You're my family, my future. Lily looked at me, tears brimming in her eyes, but a smile breaking through. I don't need any of that, Mom. Just having you is enough. But thank you, for everything. In that moment, any lingering shadows of the past faded away. We were family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love. And as we looked ahead, the future wasn't just a blank page, it was a canvas waiting for us to fill it with color, with life.